Okay, we are all set on YouTube.
Okay, waiting for the room to settle here. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'll call this meeting to order and begin by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish, whose peoples have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Niclelapem, Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, May 11th, 2026, and thank you for joining. I'm Mayor Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to introduce the other elected members of our council here today, as I always do. Beginning on my far left, we have Councillor Tim Wake. To his right is Councillor Alison Morse. To my mostly far right is Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left is Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. And this strange gentleman, for those who don't know him, who is joining us here at the council table today, is our MLA, Jeremy Valeriot, and we'll be hearing from him later on in the meeting. We are also joined by several members of our professional staff team here today, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Idsinga, as well as other members of our professional staff who will be presenting reports on agenda items here today. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and question and answer portion of the meeting, your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, as well as on our YouTube channel, where it is live streaming now to all of the kids, and where this recording will be kept in perpetuity. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of local government. We all love our island. We are all passionate about what happens here. I would encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct public comments and question and answers during those portions of the meeting to myself. For those following along, either in the gallery here today or online or at a later date, the full council package, including all of the attached reports, correspondence, and staff reports, can be found at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And with that, I will look to our corporate officer for the introduction of any late items.
There are no late items today.
No late items. And yes.
I have a question. I was expecting to see a letter from you, Mayor Leonard, to the Islands Trust that was written on May the 5th. I thought it might be in the late items. Is that going to come up at the next council meeting?
I believe so. I still need that letter presented for signature.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And also a quick note before the agenda. So those of you that are familiar with this room, you will see some fancy new technology in it that lets folks hear. This is our first public meeting using this new equipment. So feedback is welcome. Let us know how it goes. Folks that are joining online, if you want to let us know how it goes after the meeting, we're more than welcome to take in feedback. But I hope that this serves everyone and be able to follow along the meeting better, to hear us more clearly, and for the folks in the gallery to better understand what's going on as well. No late items here today, and with that, I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that
Just
carries.
for the record, I'm here now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Saunders. Just because the only change here is that I don't have Zoom front and center on my screen, so I'm just doing some window management here so I can see you as well. Okay. Moving on to public comments. I'll look to our corporate officer for public comments here today.
There's one today, one public comment.
Okay. And so our public commenter will have the full 3 minutes to make the public comment. The time does not start until you are settled and ready and relaxed and ready to go. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Lorenz.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council and staff members. My name is Jody Lorenz. I'm with Tourism Bowen Island and I was started with one of the directors and have been the only sort of staff member. Just want to say, somebody who does watch the council meetings, I appreciate the new technology. This is really helpful. Oh, look at, I'm on the screen too. Oh, and I didn't know I was going to be on the screen. Okay. Anyways, this is great. In your package, I know you're very busy, so I just wanted to add a couple of comments. In your package is our, for the Visitor Information Center, the 2025 report. Tourism Bowen Island since 2016 has been operating the Visitor Information Center on behalf of the municipality. So that represents our 10-year anniversary, and we're going into our 11th year now, and surprisingly, I'm still doing this. So I just wanted to ensure, I know you're really busy. I hope you'll take a look at that. It sort of gives what we've been doing the past year. There's some cumulative statistics there. It's also brings you the broader context of what's happening provincially, what's happening regionally. You know, FIFA's coming up, the ferry terminal, things like that. So we, Tourism Bowen Island came out as one of the recommendations from the Community Economic Development Committee, I believe in 2014, and Tourism Bowen Island was established in 2015. And our mandate was to oversee tourism on the island. So we operate, broadly speaking, in the community economic development realm. We support the services through there. And we also do visitor management and manage tourism on behalf of the municipality through the visitor center. But we also do that through our website, answering emails throughout the year. As we all know, visitors come throughout the year. And so our website is the go-to planning resource. And we try to keep that up to date. We answer emails and things like that. So just for the broader context, what we do in a visitor services realm goes beyond what we operate the visitor center. We've been doing this, as I said, this is our 11th year. One of the requests in the visitor center report is that to have an examination to look at the contract. It's never been updated since 2016. So that's something that we would really like. I'd also like to mention, we can operate the visitor center and we do it in a very professional in a role because of our connections to Destination BC, Destination Vancouver. Throughout the year, we're always doing tourism planning. And so that informs how we also manage the Visitor Information Center. And for instance, I would like to encourage staff at the municipality there's a lot of knowledge. I in particular have it over the years of how the ferry lineup works. I know that I watched the CAL meeting recently where there was the proposals for the line marking and stuff like that. And I would like to just say, I personally have a lot of knowledge on how that goes and can offer input and recommendations. There was one point, and I will write a formal letter about making sure that this is understood, but just want to ensure to support staff at the municipality. We have a lot of knowledge firsthand in the community, but also broadly speaking about tourism, what's going on in the provincially and all that kind of stuff that can benefit staff here and make the job easier. So just wanted to ensure that that is acknowledged as well. So I won't take up any more time. I really appreciate or we value our relationship with the municipality, and we do support the municipality in bylaws and things like that, enforcement. So there's ways that we could collaborate a little bit more. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, and before you go, I see a question from Councillor Getty.
So the trust had a joint meeting with the San Juan Island group, and they were talking about some pretty significant funding and efforts that they were going to be making with respect to the FIFA and the large boats that they were expecting to go into all of the small harbors around the islands. And I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion between yourself and the two marinas and possibly the municipal docks and the staff here about an influx of bigger boats that, you know, whether or not it's the first port of call crossing a border, whether or not there's enough equipment and infrastructure for an influx of visitors, and just what, if anything, preparations are being made.
Yeah, I've been trying to follow through Destination Vancouver and Destination BC. I'll be attending another webinar this week about FIFA. To be honest, they're interesting about the boats. I hadn't really thought of that. I'm not sure. That's not on my radar. But that's something I can sort of look into and see if is that expectation. When FIFA was first coming, I was thinking that there's going to be a huge influx, and we're going to try to be prepared for that. But I'm actually not sure how it will play out. We'll just do the best that we can with what we can do. Yeah, so.
Okay. If you're looking for names of contacts in San Juan, then let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
And just a couple of quick comments before you go. The first is, you know, just looking at your report, I think important to mention to the community that these numbers from 2025 are big. So an estimated nearly 26,000 people were served by the visitor services counselors at the visitor center, which is huge. And certainly the feedback that there is room for tourism Bowen Island, particularly as we look at ferry strategies to incorporate that knowledge, I think is well taken. Feels as if we've been focused more on the traffic and vehicle and roadway piece of it, but I know that with that visitor center being right down at Snug Cove, you folks are really doing the de facto customer service management for those ferry travelers down there. So I think there's definitely room to collaborate more on that, and I look forward to seeing where that goes.
Yeah, and we do, like, as soon as we are talking to somebody with a car, we certainly educate them on how to do the ferry lineup. And so we've been doing that for a number of years, but yeah, and we will continue to do that and support like the ferry marshals and that. And I know they appreciate what we do as well. So, yeah.
And it looks like there was last year was a 10% increase of folks served over the 2024 numbers. Are we expecting a even larger number this year?
Well, that's what I'm not sure. The numbers that you see is who we personally assist. That's not all of them, just to be clear about that. There's more people that come. We do our best to, what I say, capture people. Our biggest numbers was back in 2019 when we actually had more staff. So more staff translates into more interactions.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, as you know, we did a couple of years ago, a report, a 10-year strategy, destination, responsible visitor management. So we've got the knowledge base, we've got the initiatives that we'd like to implement. Our problem is the funding, not being able, the capacity to be able to do more. We would love to do more. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and one more from Councillor Fast.
Thank you, Jody. I'm just looking at the funding question here. You've mentioned how much funding Bowen gives towards or provides towards the service. And I'm seeing that it's quite a bit more than the memberships that you bring in from businesses. And so if memberships I'm assuming that's businesses, the 10,000? Is that what that is?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
our business members. Yeah, we're structured as other like Destination Vancouver where it's a member-based nonprofit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so. Oh, Councillor Morris, under the buzzer.
Thanks, Jody. That was a good report. Just a curiosity question. Do you track the statistics of visitor interaction between the kiosk and the visitor center building?
Yeah, so in the statistical report, you'll see we have numbers for the kiosk,
Okay.
and then we have numbers for the visitor center. We can operate the kiosk when we have 2 staff members on. And because of its position and the ferry lineup and all that kind of stuff, it does, when we're staffed there, it does interact more with people just because of the position. So ideally, we would like to be able to do that a bit more, but we can't sort of, unless we have 2 staff members. So those numbers are included in there, and they are separated out, so you can see that as well.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
so
very much. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
And I do appreciate the new technology. I wasn't prepared though.
Okay, with public comments concluded, we'll move on to section 3 of our agenda, delegations. We have MLA Jeremy Valeriot, our MLA from West Vancouver Sea to Sky, joining us here today. Taking the opportunity to refresh himself.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard, for having me here. I'll try and get used to the technology. This is great, big improvement, and I hope you are able to iron out the kinks fairly easily. So it's your meeting, so if it's okay with you, I'll give kind of a quick 5 or 10 minute update and then take questions. How long do you have scheduled? Is it till 2 o'clock roughly?
Yeah, that works with us. So there's a 5 or 10 minute update just on the riding and business that's going on there. And then I'm sure that our counselors around the table have questions for you as well.
Great. I'll try and keep it fairly brief. There's, as you know, there's lots to talk about. I guess just start by saying it's continues to be a real privilege to represent the people of West Van Sea to Sky, including and sometimes especially Bowen Island, especially last year's UBCM, where you batted well above your weight in terms of minister meetings. So yeah, enjoying the work, doing my best to make some forward progress, and as always, BC politics is never dull. I'll just start by introducing my team, who are conveniently, 2 of whom are conveniently right in the right in the camera. Sophie Wallace is directly behind me, Paige Calvert on the right, and Jatinder Sidhu is there in the camera. Together, we cover Whistler, Squamish, West Vancouver. Unfortunately, we don't have a staffer from Bowen Island yet, but that's never say never. And we can be reached by email, phone. We're pretty easy to find if you can spell my last name or a reasonable facsimile. Just jeremy.valeria.mla@ledge.bc.ca, which is short for legislature. I'll give a really quick update about the provincial context. I've coming to the end of a long spring session. We just did 4 weeks in Victoria, and then this week back in the constituency, and then 2 more weeks. I say I enjoy the work, except for the 3 to 4 a.m. sittings, which we did last week on the Freedom of Information Act. And so it will be nice to be finished in the legislature at the end of May and back in the riding. I think it was last spring that I was here, so there's lots happened. As I'm sure you know, we're no longer in a cooperation agreement. The Green Caucus, or the Third Party Caucus, is no longer in a cooperation agreement with the NDP government. So we've been tackling things on a vote by vote basis and doing the more traditional opposition advocacy for constituents, which has mixed results. Some people, some ministers would like to remember that we walked away from an agreement, and some ministers are quite happy to continue to collaborate with us. So we take that one issue at a time. I will say that my biggest priority, and it doesn't eclipse all the other priorities, but the biggest push right now is on regional transit for the Sea to Sky corridor, which I recognize doesn't have any direct benefits to Bowen Island. However, it's never really been possible to get from Horseshoe Bay. I know from having lived in Gibsons, it's pretty much impossible to get from Horseshoe Bay to Whistler or Squamish without going through downtown first. So a regional transit solution would help with that direction of travel. I believe you're pretty well served in terms of TransLink to the city, but up the corridor or less so. So that's a big one, and progress is still being made, but it might need one final public pressure push. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Lots of discussion about rail, less of a immediate likelihood, but still an interesting one. There are lots of enthusiasm, lots of nostalgia for the old BC Rail, and I was able to get a commitment from the Minister of Transportation that they will not hand the line back to CN So there's a lot of promise there. It's just a matter of it's a private sector business case that has to work for that. So we'll talk about your UBCM meetings, I think, getting into that. We've had the ministers of health and the minister of housing in the riding earlier this spring and winter, and had some good announcements and some really unfortunate announcements, like the community housing fund essentially being abandoned. So there as we have heard, the government's in a pretty serious deficit situation, so money is tight. Asking for new funding is exceptionally difficult at the moment, and so we're trying to focus on things that can be done with the existing budgets. Just in terms of legislation going through the provincial legislature right now, pretty big opposition to changes to the Freedom of Information Act. My colleague Rob Botterill is kind of in his wheelhouse right now, because he was he led the team that formed the first the initial Freedom of Information Act in the 90s, and he's also got 25 years in Indigenous law. So the DRIPA Declaration Act discussion have been I've been able to kind of ride on his coattails a bit. But the Freedom of Information amendments are essentially give more latitude and more discretion to the government to deny freedom of information requests, which we don't think is healthy, and it's a real damage to the legislation as it exists. I'll talk about the Declaration Act on the Rights of Indigenous People in a second. We've been able to support interprovincial trade legislation to promote safe schools and places of worship. We've got 2 treaties coming through the legislature right now, one with the Comox Nation and the other with the Kitsillas Nation, that are moving through and helping to add some context to the reconciliation discussion. And then the government has tabled 2 that will be of interest to you, to municipal governments. One is the parental leave piece of legislation. The other is on code of conduct. Those haven't come up for debate yet, but I'm sure you'll be aware of them through the UBCM's advocacy. I'm looking forward to supporting both of those. Parental leave is long overdue, and code of conduct piece is a progression from the previous legislation that required municipal governments to consider a code of conduct, but not necessarily to adopt one. And yeah, and on the Declaration Act, I mean, we might talk about it some more, but our position in the Green Caucus has been that the Declaration Act should remain as it is, and we should do the hard work of negotiation to get to reconciliation. I fully understand people's concern about private property, and given all the legal advice we've had, and clearly the Attorney General has had, and we had some influence in helping change the government's mind on this one, that work will continue. And this is a long process through the courts and waiting for the Supreme Court of Canada. And we believe that, a solution will be negotiated, but it will not be a solution that puts anybody's private property rights in jeopardy. And then just lastly, for those of you, it's a bit of an obscure process. It's pretty unique to BC from what I can gather, is a process called budget estimates, where the opposition gets roughly 120 hours to sit down with all the ministers of the Crown and ask questions, sometimes usually related to budget, but sometimes a bit more of a public relations exercise for some members of the opposition. But I was able to ask the Minister of Transportation a number of questions, one about rail, which yielded some pretty good information, and one of the others was about BC Ferries and the Snug Cove terminal. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of passing the buck on this one between the authority and the commissioner, but he did commit to contacting the chair of the authority to see if there was some kind of solution that could be brought. I understand there's a fee bylaw coming through this council as well, which I'm hoping will move the needle. I think we've sent that transcript to you, but essentially but more than I actually thought that the minister would say, given that they typically tend to push it all onto BC Ferries. And then I think that's all I have for general update, and I'm happy to discuss any of these or other items that you have questions or comments on.
Thank you, Emily Laird. I'll look around council table for questions, comments. Councillor Wake,
Thank you.
Councillor Morris, was that a handout?
Yeah.
Okay.
The funding for housing projects and the loss of that funding came as a shock, especially after the apparently huge commitment towards it for probably 5 years before. I just wonder if you have any, if there's, what can we do?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wake. It's it was I think it was a surprise, to be frank, even to the housing minister. It came through the budget, and the budget is a bit of an obscure process. So they cut that 1.3 million, and the minister probably found out about it about an hour before the budget came down. We've been quite active in questioning the government about this, pointing out, and I'm interested to hear the local case. Certainly in the case of Housing Squamish, they went out on a limb, $500,000 on a site that they expected to get. They waited 10 months to get approval for, and eventually were turned down. And I think there will be an attempt to recover some of that by this government, but we haven't been able to get concrete answers. I think they're scrambling to try and find what projects they can support, and I think some of it will be that acute need, and some of it will be how far down the road were they. But we haven't been able to get any good answers. And I the Minister Boyle is, I think, quite committed to this, but without that funding. So we're certainly advocating strongly for some of it to be renewed, and we haven't had any tangible progress on that yet. Maybe I can ask how it affects Bowen, and sorry, I don't know this yet, but you've got a project in the hopper, I assume.
Well, we have, or Lookout Society has one, which has received funding or approval for funding. But we're also looking at lot 1, and we're just beginning the process there. So it looked like it might be an option. Now what we're hearing basically is the Canada Builds funding is where everybody has to go. But just wondered if, I think we need both.
Yeah, if I could, there was some clarification about whether this was a pause or a cancellation, and then there is, the official language, I believe, on the Community Housing Fund is they're not doing any more intakes, but that doesn't mean that might not change in the following intake year. So it's worth keeping those things warm. Spending money is a whole other aspect that's hard to judge. But yes, Canada Builds is potentially going to be another option, but there's a lot of definition needed on that, and so we're in contact with MP Weiler's office on what that will look like. But that's probably the next best option if they don't reinstate some of the community housing fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Over to you, Councillor Morris.
2 questions. The first is putting my accounting hat on, is the size of the provincial debt and concern about credit rating status and impacts. Is there any concerns from the Green Caucus about that?
Sorry, I might need Councillor Morris to repeat the concern about debt and deficit, and then what was the second one?
Well, the size of the provincial debt
Okay, yeah.
and it's this effect it's going to have on our credit rating.
Oh, credit.
Province's credit rating.
Credit rating, yes, thank you. Through the mayor, we're extremely concerned about the size of the deficit and the debt. I think we're both, MLA Botterill was once the financial controller for the TD Bank, actually lived on Bowen Island, I think in the 80s, as some of you may know. I'm an engineer by training, so I firmly believe in balancing the books. To be completely fair, there is some room for borrowing and investing at times of need. I haven't been convinced by this government that that's their strategy. What I've see so far, and maybe reeling some of it back with this latest budget is a sort of an inability to plan ahead, and maybe an inability to say no to some projects that, in order to balance the book. So that's very somewhat subjective, but it's based on some information, a fair bit of information, I guess. And it's already has an impact on credit rating. So that's quite concerning. What we've been saying is try to add a bit more context compared to what the official opposition, the Conservatives, are saying, which is, the typical, often the reaction is cut costs, and we've been saying, well, we also have a revenue problem. So one of our offered solutions has been a wealth tax on the ultra wealthy, so about 500 people in BC that could essentially, with a one-time wealth tax, could erase that deficit. Now, that wouldn't be the main purpose, and we still need to have a structural balance, but there are revenue solutions that can come into play that don't affect regular people, and that do work towards more equality and in general in society. So that's been our contribution, but I agree with you. It is a deep concern, and there doesn't seem to be really any plan to bring the deficit under control. The government's looking at revenue from LNG and mining, which may come through at some point, but those are both somewhat, that's a lot of risk to put on a government balance sheet without certainty.
And the second question has to do, can you elaborate a little more on your meeting with the minister about the BC Fair, Minister of Transportation and BC Ferries on Bowen?
Yes, happy to. So just for context, I had an hour with Minister Farnworth, which is, the upper end of what we get in the third caucus. One of the priorities was to ask about Snug Cove. I know it's an ongoing issue. He knew about the fee bile. He calls it a business license fee, but and maybe that's, maybe I'll ask you whether there's a distinction there, but he says he's familiar with the issue. Interested to see how the interchange between BC Ferries and Bowen Island is on the business fee. Having said that, he takes the issue seriously. BC Ferries is an independent company, although the province is a shareholder, and what he commits to doing is contacting the chair of the authority to see if they can do something with the board and ferries to try and see if there are solutions that can be put in place. If they were able to do something last year, which I believe there was a somewhat satisfactory interim solution, is there any reason why they can't do it again this year and try and work on a more sustainable long-term solution that works for both of them? So that's the extent of what he had to say. There could be follow-up, but I think your approach is a good one, and maybe we'll change the narrative on this, and so at least I hope it does. It gives you a bit more leverage, I think, and highlights the issue in a really financial way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Over to you, Councillor Getty.
There's a meeting this Thursday evening, I believe, that Concerned Citizens, and they're talking about the fracking and the LNG terminal in Squamish. And I'm wondering if you've had an invitation, if you or any of your staff are going to be able to attend that meeting in terms of sharing information.
You see, maybe I'll look to staff, because I've been to, or actually we went to one, staff went to one in Squamish, was it a couple of weeks ago, with through My Sea to Sky.
Yeah.
Pretty active on this, but I don't have this
Maybe the
coming
same
Thursday.
information,
I'll just quickly.
Heads up then.
We have.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Okay.
And looking to, I'll be speaking to Anton.
Okay. Oh, that's Concerned Citizens of Bowen. Okay, gotcha. Yes, we're aware, pretty engaged in this issue, as you can imagine, going all the way back to 2020. I will try and see if one of us can be there to have some input, but we'll certainly take the summary of it and bring it forward.
And with respect to the BC ferries and the first reading that we did of a bylaw with respect to asking them for $150,000 for use of our roads, have you had a briefing in terms of what the basis of our bylaw argument is so that you can help us defend it? Push it?
I've not had a detailed briefing. What we
Okay.
gladly
To-do list.
welcome one. I think, yes, I'm happy to support you in that, and understanding the ins and outs of it would be very valuable. And what the overall strategy is, because I know you've been working on it for a long time, and this is maybe a little bit like the District of Squamish putting a pretty big tax bill on wood fiber. It's the result of years of frustration, and this is the action that you could take. But the details would be valuable to learn.
Thanks.
Not seeing any further questions. The question I have is related to the local government climate action program that's not being renewed, which was certainly disappointed to hear. I know many of my colleagues across the Lower Mainland were incredibly disappointed to see that program not renewed as a stable source of funding for local governments, particularly because it was also recommended by Clean BC to keep. So I'm curious, just what your stance is as the MLA is, and if the Green Party is active in advocating to restore that funding to local governments.
Yeah, we've advocated. I asked the Minister of Energy this question, didn't get a very good answer. We've been pretty, Clean, as you know, we're involved in a review of Clean BC, and that is an ongoing discussion as to which of those Clean BC programs will continue. But I understand that this is, yeah, it is very disappointing, and it reflects, to be honest, this government's lack of ambitious action on climate. And to some degree, they're reading the public mood, which we all know will change. But it's not a good step forward. And can you give me an idea of what that kind of loss of funding means to Bowen to this municipality on a annual basis?
Yeah, it's not huge. It is a stable amount of funding. We put it into projects both at the fire hall and here at the community center. Maybe I'll look to staff, either the CAO or CFO, if you've got some more granular insight as to what we take up from that program stream.
Approximately $75,000 a year. There was 1 year where 3 years of funding was pushed out in one lump sum, but it does on average work out to about $75,000 per year. And yes, we typically used it for solar panel projects, other types of climate action incentive projects.
Thank you. Thanks for highlighting it. I'd like to ramp up the discussion of this. I've got a meeting that's supposed to be set with the minister to talk about where Clean BC recommendations stand, and I'll make sure this is part of that.
Okay. And just on the ferry impact piece, certainly it's a hot topic for Bowen. It's going to get steamier as the summer season moves on down in Snug Cove. And just following up on the comments that you received from the minister, as well as a news piece that I saw on CBC this morning that quoted him as well. I think the challenge there is that if I was to read between the lines and through some of the conversations I've had, is that the minister's pointing to the BC Ferry Authority, is also taking again the stance of the arm's length approach that, it's a private corporation, the province doesn't have much to do with it. And the comments on the news were that it's 99% effective. That's what, folks want to see when in the very same segment that, mayors and electeds and stakeholders are really expressing frustration with the system. My encouragement in advocacy to the minister would be that we're moving into a season where the province is about to negotiate the next performance term with the corporation. And that is absolutely a point in time where the province gets to set standards and make declarations of the type of service that it wants to see from the operator. And as a result, my advocacy and the advocacy of some of my counterparts in other jurisdictions is going to be to the province. You are the signatory to this contract. This isn't a ferry authority piece. This is not a commissioner piece. This is between the government of BC that represents the residents of and users of the system and the actual operator itself. And my encouragement to the government is to take some strong action and take some strong advocacy for passengers of that system, for residents, for visitors, to actually begin investing in capital and investing in operations into a system that starts to serve everyone. And so that performance term, that performance contract piece, I think is going to be incredibly key as we come into the fall. And that's certainly where we'll be placing some of our advocacy efforts.
Thank you. If I may encourage you to make that advocacy, that is a good juncture. Last time I met with the CEO, talked quite frequently about that next performance term and what that means. And so please copy me on that, and I'll try and advocate alongside you. If I may, sorry, I don't see any other hands up. Can I just ask a question about the UBCM meetings? I don't have the full list in front of me, but I recall BC Ferries, water supply, and a couple of other issues. Can you let me know if you've had any forward progress on any of those meetings, or any official replies or unofficial replies, and whether there's some that I should try and break the logjam on that are kind of most urgent?
Maybe I'll look down to the staff level, either probably to our CEO, to see if there's any pressing issues that we have with the province that we haven't received action on.
Through the mayor, nothing I can think of at the moment. We're still figuring out our strategy for the next UPCM meeting and what types of meetings we'll be requesting. So nothing I could see right now with this meeting.
Councillor Morris.
I guess the only one that pops to mind is we just doing the census. We're a little concerned that we might hit 5,000. And the issues we raised with the minister meetings last year about, all of a sudden having to pay 70%, I think it is, of the cost of policing versus having it more gradually phased in. That's the issue still on the table.
Thank you. That census form, I believe, is the deadline today. I believe that's probably a good opportunity to remind them that, because I felt they were pretty non-committal on that one.
Yeah, they were.
And it's, one of those fiscal items that bad timing for everybody involved. But if you do reach over 5,000, yeah, it's got a pretty serious implication. And I think those numbers come out later in the year. So that's one that I'll follow. I think that's a Minister of Finance piece. So let me see if they've got any news on that. They should be sending you letters this spring of at least acknowledging the meetings. But if you haven't had anything, then yeah, I'll ask about that one. I'll see the minister day after tomorrow at the Web Summit downtown.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Wonderful to see you and your staff in person, for making the trip out on what looks to be a beautiful Bowen day outside. So I hope you get to enjoy some of our amenities here in the Cove or down on the pier, and looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Mayor Leonard. Thanks, Council. I feel like usually when I come here, it's snug cove and then quick turnaround. We've got a couple of hours this afternoon to. Been a long time since I've been to Cape Roger Curtis, so got a couple of hours to get on our bikes
Beautiful.
and do a little tour, see other parts of the island. So I'm looking forward to that, and appreciate your time, and look forward to next time.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Okay, and council, directing your attention back to the agenda. We are on the consent agenda, and I will look for councillors who wish to pull items from the consent agenda. Councillor Wake.
I wanted to pull a letter that has appeared on the agenda, which we received on Friday from Brian Thomas Peter.
Okay.
But I'm hoping that we can talk about it.
Let me. I should be handling this one.
Councillor Wake, that was not included on this agenda as a late item because it didn't involve an item currently existing on the agenda.
Okay.
So it would be added to the next meeting.
Okay, so we can look at it next meeting then, if that works. Councilors, other items you wish to pull from the consent agenda?
That's first.
Not seeing any. I'll look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the consent agenda has been passed, and we are down on to section 7.1, introduction to septic maintenance bylaw. We have Daniel Martin, our manager of planning and development, joining us here today. Okay, and I believe our CAO is going to make some introductory remarks as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council today. So I just wanted to frame the context for this next piece that's coming forward. So Council included the development of a septic maintenance bylaw in 2026 in the strategic plan update. And this work will connect to with a broader water sustainability plan and watershed management plan. The main reason for bringing this forward is that many of the older on-site septic systems are aging and at risk of failure. We already are seeing signals that this may be affecting our environment. A report from the Raincoast Conservation Foundation last summer looked at water quality in Grafton Lake and detected some substances like sucralose, which can point to impacts from nearby septic systems. Simply put, some systems may not be working as they should, and that creates a risk to our lakes, groundwater, and overall environmental health. This bylaw is one way to reduce that risk by making sure septic systems are properly maintained over time. A second key reason for the bylaw is to support the use of more advanced septic systems known as type 2 and type 3 systems that achieve a higher level of treatment. These systems use mechanical components and they're able to work on more difficult terrain and may allow for more flexible options when developing a site. But they only work properly if they are regularly maintained. Without proper maintenance, these systems can fail. So the bylaw provides a tool to make sure that ongoing maintenance actually happens. Another issue we are trying to address is what happens when properties change ownership. It's important knowledge about how septic systems operates is not always passed from one owner to the next. So that can lead to some inadvertent misuse or neglect. And the bylaw also helps reduce the risk that by setting clear, consistent expectations for maintenance, regardless of who owns the property. There is also a connection here to housing and development. So if we were only relying on basic type 1 systems, we often need larger lot sizes. So this limits how much land can be used. So type 2 and type 3 systems can allow some more flexibility in the size of lots that can be developed on. At the same time, we're also constrained by capacity at the Snug Cove wastewater plant. So upgrades will likely require some kind of grant funding opportunity or longer term building up of reserves. In the meantime, new homes must rely on on-site septic systems. So supporting these well-maintained type 2 and type 3 systems gives us another option to help facilitate housing on Bowen. So this type of bylaw is not new. Other local governments in BC's have similar requirements, as our manager of planning will be detailing. And Bowen already uses a similar approach for commercial grease traps, where property that owners are required to maintain equipment at a certain standard. So this is kind of similar in that aspect that we're asking people to manage things to a certain standard. So overall, this bylaw is about protecting water quality, making sure systems are properly maintained, and supporting responsible development. And so now I'll introduce our manager of planning and development, who will walk through the details in more depth.
Thank you. And over to you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. So I'm here today to talk about septic maintenance bylaw. So this was included in Council's 2026 strategic plan. Under responsible ecosystem, the action was to develop a septic maintenance bylaw integrated with a broader water sustainability and watershed management plan. So some of this has been covered by the scale, but why do septic systems matter? The majority of properties on Bowen Island are serviced by these on-site wastewater systems, so septic fields, septic systems. Septic failures are often invisible until we see impacts occurring, and common impacts can include nutrient loading into lakes and oceans and groundwater. And this can be especially impactful for lakes used as water sources like Grafton Lake. And regular prescribed maintenance reduces failure rates in septic systems. Just some overview types of septic systems. So we talk about type 1, type 2, type 3 systems. And type 1 is sort of your classic septic system where there's a septic tank that goes straight into a dispersal field. And it's typically gravity fed. From that point, type 2 then introduces what's often called aerobic treatment. So there's essentially a mini package treatment plant that does some initial treatment of the septic before it just enters the disposal field. And then a type 3 system has both treatment and disinfection components in it. So it's a much more complex system that has this treatment and disinfection components and enters into a pressurized distribution field. So as I've said, majority of Bowen Island relies on private on-site septic systems. They are governed since 2009 by the Sewerage System Regulation, the SSR. So under this system, systems are designed and installed by authorized persons as defined in the regulation. And this can differ. There's a higher requirement for a type 3 system compared to a type 1 and type 2, but the septic system type is determined by an authorized person. So that person designs the field and then typically the same person, but could be a different person, but authorized person installs it. The health authority receives a filing from the authorized person that the system is consistent with the standard practice and filing so the health authority receives the filing from the authorized person. They don't typically review it. They confirm that it meets their standards in terms of it's an authorized person and it's in the correct format. And we rely on that filing letter in issuing building permits. So when somebody wants to build, they have an authorized person design their septic field. That person determines if a type 1 or type 2 or type 3 system is appropriate for their lot, and they design it, they file it with the coastal health accordingly, and we rely on that for the building permit. I did just a review of 10 of our recent building permits for new dwelling types for properties on Bowen. And so of the 10, 6 of the houses built a type 3 system, 3 built a type 2, and 1 built a type 1. So that's probably a fairly common breakdown on Bowen. And then I'll say, so when a system is complete, the authorized person files a construction completion report with the health authority. And then according to the Sewerage System Regulation, homeowners are responsible for ongoing operation and maintenance based on a maintenance plan that's part of that completion. And the regulation requires homeowners to keep records of the maintenance that's done. But there's no proactive or routine inspections by the province to ensure that that maintenance is being followed and records being kept. So some local governments have addressed that lack of inspection through their own programs. So on the other side of the coin from building permits are at subdivision stage. So subdivision approvals are guided by Vancouver Coastal Health subdivision guidelines. And their guidelines are based on that a lot being created should have a type 1 system and should have space for a backup type 1 system. So their rationale is when the system fails, there should be space for a backup system as well. The size of this area is based on the soil type, but it requires an area between 500 and 900 square meters. The covenants are placed on a property to protect that area from future development. So sometimes if you're ever scanning our online mapping system, BOMAP, you can see these weird squares on properties, and those are typically the septic field covenant area. It requires a depth of native soil based on their guidelines that's not present on many Bowen Island sites. So some places are not able to subdivide under the Coastal Health subdivision guidelines, even though they may have the size requirement, they don't have the soil requirement. And then many existing lots on Bowen could never meet VCH's subdivision guidelines today. So many of our lots that were created in the 20s or the 60s are simply too small or do not have the soil type to be created today. And I'll say too that the way this works in subdivision, so a lot may be subdivided based on meeting Coastal Health subdivision guidelines, and there'll be an area protected for septic fields. When those properties come to build a house, they're not required to use that area. They're not required to build a type 1 system. They can build a type 3 system. They can build it somewhere else on the lot. They just are required to have an area that they do not use for anything but a septic field. And then our subdivision developing servicing bylaw, as well as saying that we refer to Coastal Health for comment on whether it complies with their guidelines, contemplates approving subdivisions based on type 2 and type 3 systems. So in permitting those type 2 and type 3 systems, it says that we may require covenants to require maintenance on those type 2 and type 3 systems. And so for comparison, there are type 3 field sizes, typically about 90 square meters. So it's about a tenth the size of the covenants that could be required by Coastal Health. But there are limitations on approving it based on those covenants. So some of them can be like uneven application of the covenants. The wording can be different depending on the timing. They're poor visibility to future owners of knowing what they're supposed to do, and they're difficult to enforce. So for some of those reasons, we've never approved subdivisions based on this type 2 and type 3 system, even though our bylaw sort of contemplates that it could be allowed. Just so what some other local governments have done. So the CRD, the Capital Regional District, is the only regional district we could identify with a mandatory program. And they have a fairly straightforward maintenance bylaw. It requires pump outs of type 1 systems every 5 years. It requires for type 2 and type 3 that the property owners submit evidence they've completed the annual maintenance as required by an authorized person. Some of the background material on their program outlines there is a cost associated just to manage that system, essentially manage that spreadsheet of all the properties and keeping track of it all. And they roll it out to municipalities as they want to join. So North Sandwich joined in 2023, the most recent municipality to join. Another example we looked at, the Comox Valley Regional District contemplated a similar program, but ultimately did not proceed with it. And that was based on public feedback through their engagement process, which outlined concerns around cost and overreach and preference for a more targeted approach. And so that kind of leads into the idea of a septic maintenance program, and our strategic plan outlines specifically bylaw, but just highlighting here that there's a number of avenues that it can take. So at the most basic, it could be a municipality or a local government could say our maintenance program is we do education, we do information on our website, we do handouts, maybe we do workshops or whatever to sort of help identify the value in doing this and the need to do it. Some other places have looked at doing incentives, so they offer rebates for pump outs or rebates for maintenance. And you could see a program that has targeted intervention, so it could highlight specific areas of the island that are most at risk, either at risk because of health concerns of failure or at risk because of smaller lots and older systems. And then you move into bylaws that would have requirements for pump outs, requirements for inspections, mandatory inspections with required maintenance. So you can see how programs can be tailored to fit what the need is in the community and what the desire is for that. So what we have today, the recommendation is to prepare an implementation plan. And so some of the pieces of that implementation plan are more fulsome background review and data gathering. So we're working with Coastal Health on identifying their filing system for septic fields on Bowen and sort of mapping and able to show like, okay, where are older systems on Bowen, where are newer systems? Working with the work underway for the Grafton Lake Management Plan. So building on that Rain Coast study and showing, okay, what data do we have on scope of problem in the Grafton Lake Management or Grafton Lake watershed. Then it's working on defining potential program options. So bringing sort of a slate of options and saying, okay, based on what we're seeing, here are a range of options for council. Building communication education plan to go with it, to reach out for engagement and feedback from the public on that range of options. And then going into administrative and cost analysis, the report identified that there could be staffing costs associated with this program, depending on the scale of program. But till you sort of have an outline of what the scale of program is, it's hard to nail that down. Just going a bit more communication to the public. So we've seen in other places, education is foundational. So engagement goes to explain homeowner responsibilities so that the responsibilities in the sewage system regulation are not, exist currently. So there would not be a municipal requirement. They're a requirement of having a septic field and operating under the provincial regulation. But it also comes to clarify benefits of proactive maintenance that, you know, a septic field, especially a type 2 and type 3, is quite a complex system that you can't just install and leave and be like, oh, it's going to work forever, because it's not. And by doing your required maintenance and following the maintenance plan, it will actually last longer. And then engagement as well will shape the program design. So feedback based on that helps shape what the desired program is. Okay, and then as I said, financial consideration, that having a fully fleshed out septic maintenance bylaw has operating costs, have staffing costs. That's not in anybody's work plan at the moment. But depending on the scale of that program, the cost could be different. All right, and then I skipped alternatives. So an alternative for council may be to wish to instead include consideration of a septic maintenance bylaw into the updated OCP. So that could be a proposed policy in the OCP that then is considered more broadly as part of engagement on the OCP. And that would essentially, by doing that, staff would be deferring the actual work on the implementation plan until after the OCP is adopted. So the OCP itself would say, okay, consider having a septic maintenance bylaw. We see that stays in through the OCP adoption process. The OCP is adopted and then it becomes a project. Another alternative would be to wait for the Grafton Lake Management Plan. So that plan is underway. We are working with the consultants on sort of what their findings are in an initial point of what we could incorporate now. But another approach for council would be like, wait till we have the Grafton Lake Management Plan in hand and see if it has specific findings, recommendations for septic maintenance in the Grafton Lake watershed. And third alternative would be for council to direct staff to take no further action on this project. So that's the end, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I will look to council for questions, comments. Councillor Wake.
Thank you, through the mayor. This is, I think, a really important item. We clearly have a type 1 septic field maintenance problem, and we've got lots of evidence of what it's been contributing. We've been talking about encouraging type 2 and type 3 systems, and some of the resistance has been, well, you know, if people don't look after them, then you know, they break down. So that's a reason not to have them. I think it's the reverse. If we have those and we have a program like the one you're outlining, where there's reporting that has to come in every year, possibly even tied to tax filing or something that happens annually, it will improve things moving forward. In the meantime, there is the issue of inspecting and finding the ones that have failed and what we do about that. But I totally support this, and I have to make the recommendation when the time comes.
Thank you, Councillor Wake. Councillor Morris.
Quite a few sort of questions. I've had a few people talk to me about the cost of doing this. And just looking at your recommendation, it talks about the proposed bylaw that you're going to go out in consultation on. And I guess I'm thinking your recommendation is one step too far ahead. We should be going out and educating people as to the issue, trying to describe and getting more data, and then do a round on a proposed bylaw, because at this point you don't know what proposed bylaw would say, and you've got several different options in here. So, and the education side is, I think, quite key. And do we have any stats from Mainland or any of the other providers as to how often they come and pump out? I mean, requiring a mandatory annual pump out when the users and the systems are, you know, it depends how many people are in your house, whether you send stuff down a carburetor and all that sort of stuff. So to require an annual mandatory pump out when it might not be needed is not something that I could support. But this point, I think we should be doing some education, distributing the idea a bit more, and gathering a bit more data.
Through the chair, if I can respond, just as I was finalizing my presentation this morning, I thought, yeah, my recommendation is maybe not as clear, because what the recommendation is to direct staff to prepare an implementation plan for a septic maintenance bylaw. And then I included after the comment to say, you know, there should be public engagement piece of that implementation plan. But if council just wanted to make the first, you know, up till to prepare an implementation plan for a septic maintenance bylaw, full stop, that's essentially the staff recommendation.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it should be including public engagement on the issue,
Sure.
not on a bylaw. So tell people why, you know, go out and get out there and say why you want to do this and how it might work or might not work. And have some more costs. I mean, we've got a type 2 system. I think it costs us $90 a year or something like that to get it inspected, which we do annually. So it's not a big expense, but I mean, I just think all that information needs to be out there. And then the other question is, you know, somebody raised me the other day, just because there's sucrose in the water doesn't make it a health concern. So what else is in there that is a health concern? They didn't believe that sucrose was a health issue.
I can,
Because that's the
it was-
artificial sugar, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just through the mayor, like, I believe in the report that was one parameter that could indicate a breakthrough of septic, but with that, there was gonna be other parameters like fecal coliforms and other various constituents that are more toxic and harmful. So that in and of itself might not be the health risk, but it's an indicator of a wider problem.
But to follow up on that, with respect, the question was, if you found the sucrose, but no fecal coliform or any of the other things, then is it an issue?
Again, through the chair, I believe they did find fecal coliforms in there, so the two kind of. I agree, there's probably some more work required here, but it's an indicator, and there was fecal coliforms there, and obviously as a surface water, we're required to treat for that as well, so. Yeah.
Over to you, Councillor Fest.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was sucralose. Anyway, and there was cocaine. There were lots of other things in that report.
I had you after Sue. Okay.
I'm concerned about the environmental things that you mentioned, and I feel like I'm trading places with you, Councillor Wake, because I'm in support of this motion currently, unless somebody changes my mind, because during the last OCP update, affordable housing, attainable housing, accessible housing, whatever you want to call it, was one of the dominant themes, along with the Green Oasis and keeping our environment clean. And at that time, Dr. Dave Whitty was talking about exploring newer kinds of technology to solve some of these problems, rather than always thinking about the existing technology, the type 1 septic beds, and how to enable more tiny clusters of laneway and coach housing and things like that. He was talking about composting toilets. This is 10 years ago. And gray water recycling and things like that. So it seems to me that by having a septic maintenance bylaw, that we would also be potentially opening the door to some of the other technologies that may be useful in times of drought, for example, or maybe quite less expensive when it comes time to replace a failing system. But anyway, I'm not going to make a big case about it. I just mean the idea about having a septic maintenance bylaw may cost less money, may open up more opportunities for small clusters of more affordable housing, and will help us keep our protect the source, keep our groundwater clean and pure, and healthy waters is so important. So I'm in support of getting started on this bylaw through the implementation plan, and I like the idea of replacing the last two words with the word issue. as suggested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fast. Over to you, Councillor Getty.
All right. So when I first moved to Bowen, one of the things there were three major things that I had to be educated on. Suddenly I wasn't in the middle of the city with a sewage system that you could just flush the toilet, not really worry about it. Although my office backed up with all sorts of other things that shouldn't have been flushed down, but we had major problems that way. But a septic is totally different, and I had to learn, and I learned from the Collins sisters, basically, who'd been here for 100 years and had all sorts of good information. I also had to learn how to cut wood and how to build a fire in a wood stove. But, you know, I think there's all the people that move from the city that have different things that they have to learn. And one of which is how to keep your septic system functioning and healthy. And, you know, it is a science and an art. And I think that education is really important. And it's, you know, it may be invisible in terms of when they fail, but it certainly has an odor. And it does have, you know, some downstream effects that are hard on not only your neighbors, but, you know, some of the other critters that live on the island. So I think that it is important. I think that we are at a stage where we need to study it and have some data. And if that's a major part of the implementation plan certainly in the beginning, in terms of figuring out, we're not going to be able to take on the whole island, and figure out where the hotspots are and where things need to have some attention. So I think that getting us to the position where we're dealing with, I mean, mine is a 50-year-old septic system, and I've taken very, very good care of it. But, you know, and I'm wondering if there's misinformation in terms of it's not an annual pump out, it's a 5-year pump out, as far as I read, and whether or not people understand the importance of that and what happens with the tank and why it needs to be pumped. So, and those costs are going up. So that's the major cost for most of the people that have a type 1. And I think that kind of information would be helpful for people to know. But if we couple this in with the Grafton Lake Management Plan so that we understand what's happening in that. We had one study that was prefaced by, this is a one little point in time and we don't have anything to compare it with, and we need to have more information. And that there are indicators that there are some human, if it's not the septic systems, then maybe it is the swimmers. And we have some indication that there's human waste in that water. And we need to pay attention to that. And that may be happening in other areas as well. We haven't had the chance to test, and maybe we want to test. But I think helping people that come here that have never used a septic system before and getting that educational component is really important. And I think that that would save everybody a lot of time, money, and effort if we had healthy septic systems. And then whether or not there's also a component, when I was first involved with anything to do with the trust, there was the Hervonen report, and it was talking about the water availability and the land capacity for septic. And I think that if we're introducing and encouraging, and your graph in terms of having more of the 2 and 3 types of systems, then I would like also to know what that means in terms of our inherent capacity to expand beyond the original numbers that, I mean, when I first moved here in 1980, it was, 5,000 people would be the absolute upper limit in terms of the number of humans that this island could support. We're close to that. And what does that mean in terms of shutting down and not having the capacity to support more people? And if we're doing 2 and 3 systems, then maybe we have more capacity, but we have to pay closer attention then to water if we can deal with the other, plus all the social amenities that we've got on the island. So it has to do with the overall land use planning as well, I think, in terms of having more information and studying this properly, and figuring out where we can get the best information in the shortest period of time before we start actually crafting what the bylaw looks like. I mean, this is the first stage. It's like, let's just open up a couple of windows and doors and see what we've got and get some information. And I'm not opposed to that. And I think that the arguments that we've heard and the letters that we've received are talking about the very end position where we shouldn't be doing this because it's overreach. And that might be, that certainly was the result from the Comox Valley. It may not be, I'm not sure if we're going to be in that position, if we're going to be more like the Capital Regional District, and we'll figure out what fits best for Bowen. But at this point, yeah, I'd like more information because I think this is a good direction to go in terms of getting cleaner water.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. Some questions that I have. So just first, so I'm crystal clear on this piece. Simply having a septic system, whether it's type 1, 2, or 3, binds the owner to maintenance of that system. Is that correct?
That's correct under the regulation.
Okay. And currently, because the regulations allow for approval to build those systems, there is no follow-up inspection, ongoing anything that's really required or monitored.
No, I mean,
Aside from type 2 or type 3, where there is a
Yeah.
requirement.
Yeah, that's required under the regulation, but otherwise there's no like body that comes and inspects, like government body that comes and inspects your septic.
Okay, yeah, I think that's important just in the context of the owner's responsibility for the system, that once that system is built, they are ultimately responsible for the maintenance and operation of it. I am supportive of, if we want to colloquially call it, the taking care of your poop bylaw. I think that makes sense to me, particularly as we're on an island. I did find the Rain Coast study intriguing and to some degree compelling, despite the fact that it was a point in time study. The indicators that were in that study that put us on par with False Creek for a watershed like Grafton Lake, which is supposed to be rural in the middle of an island, is frankly alarming. So I would agree that, data collection and evidence base is needed. I would certainly encourage the municipality to consider, and I would certainly support it, some additional point in time studies for this or some other type of data modeling that can get into, a definitive, yeah, this is septic driven, even though I think the case is already there, but just to see what the magnitude is of it at various points of the year. I support the staff recommendation as written in terms of an implementation plan. I would question whether it's fully ready to go out to public engagement yet. Also with the processes of the OCP and the watershed management plan in play. I think it's difficult to send something out to the public when there's a major impending piece of work on the watershed that's being done that helps support this as well. So to me, it does feel like there is a bit of a sequencing piece. My encouragement, if we go approve an implementation plan, first, I think we need to be clear on what an implementation plan is, because it's not a bylaw. It's not bringing it, there's no direction yet to bring it back to first reading. But that, it include some collection of data pieces. It include some solutions, and I believe you call them program options that are evidence-based. And that also include that watershed management plan, so that when that plan comes out, we're not backfilling it from information that then we get later. And then, so when it goes out to the public to say, hey, this is our best shot at the options that we have that are available to us. This is what we've done on the watershed management plan. This is what we know exists in the watershed now from a data perspective. These are our very best options that we can bring forward from, and I appreciate the range from education to, uniform municipal officers that are going onto every single property to drill and take a look at septic, that's going to cost owners tens of thousands of dollars. Like, I think there's something in between there that's probably reasonable and feasible. Even to Councillor Morse's comments, does it need to be a yearly pump out, or is it 5 years? What's the differential on those type 1, type 2, type 3 systems? And then ultimately, in that implementation plan, all of those program options should be costed. So that council and staff of the municipality isn't going out to a public engagement to say, here are the options. We don't know what they're going to cost, because I believe that the cost pressure, as well as the boogeyman fears about the municipality reaching into government overreach, is ones that need to have data presented to them. And, again, just from my own seat, I do support it. I don't believe that septic maintenance is government overreach. It's the other side of the water quality coin. So, we have so many residents that are asking us to really look at Grafton Lake and really look at our watersheds and really look at water quality. And if we're not looking at what our effluent is discharging into and the quality of that effluent, I mean, half the equation in my mind is missing. So not seeing any speakers in the speakers list, maybe just to your, an assertive Councillor Morse letting me know that I am incorrect. I will turn it back over to you.
Well, when I'm reading the resolution, and I will ask for clarification from the planner, it says including public engagement. What I was reading that to mean that the implementation plan would include a public engagement plan. So I'm not keen on leaving the words out. It isn't involving I'm reading that to mean the implementation plan is going to, have public engagement along the way and get informed comments back, not.
Sure, and I'm disagreeing with you, because I believe that there's data that's missing.
Yeah.
That needs to be used to
But
construct
you're
it.
going to engage the public once you've got the data and all that kind of thing, and maybe you'll have to engage the public twice, because you'll find out what kind of data they're wanting. And another point is fecal coliform in Grafton Lake could have been caused by the beaver, the kids swimming, not necessarily from a failed septic.
Right, yeah, beavers
Or
doing
the geese
cocaine.
or whatever. Well, the cocaine could come from the septic water,
Right.
because that's the water's fishing through in groundwater.
Right.
It doesn't mean the septic's failed.
Right.
But
So-
the fecal coliform, as I say, comes from all sorts of different sources, and as far as I know, you can't tell the difference between human and animal.
Yes, and points taken. So my next question
And
to,
my last comment.
yes,
As a data source, my understanding is that, which I've seen with the real estate agents, is they all require a septic system inspection, the purchasing by the purchaser's agent will want the vendor to provide an inspection that the septic system is functioning properly. So that's a data source to ask the real estate agents how often that happens. So,
Mhm.
where they found that they aren't working.
Right. So Mr. Martin, back to the motion or the recommendation in front of us. If a motion was to pass that says proceed with an implementation plan based on the conversation here, what would your anticipated course of action be? Should we, is there places that we want to modify the motion or add that alternative to, or where would you see this going based on the discussion that we've had here today?
Yeah, I think in any case, we would be returning with the implementation plan. So it's not something where we would prepare an implementation plan and, launch engagement without bringing it to council. Like, we would bring it to council with an engagement plan with the data that we have, seeking direction to say, okay, now we're going to go forward with this to bring this to the public. So, Yeah, so I mean, I think definitely from yourself, Mayor, I think I heard moving more towards alternative two, where we said include consideration of the Grafton Lake Management Plan, and that would say, okay, we're waiting till that's more or less complete, where we can then confidently incorporate that into our engagement, into our education, into our options, and the data from that. Absent that would be trying to bring them sort of at the same time, I guess, advancing work on the implementation plan, you know, potentially in advance of that being done.
Okay. And can you remind me when that implement, or when the watershed management plan is due to come back to us?
I'm gonna look to our CEO.
Yeah, recent indication is that it's likely in fall.
Okay.
I mean, what that alternative two essentially means is that there wouldn't be significant advancement on the bylaw front until it'll probably be left to the next council, is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
It's like, because we're gonna get that watershed management plan hopefully before the end of this term, and then it's gonna be a matter that's gonna be taken up by the next council.
Did you have your hand up first?
I'm prepared to read the second alternative as a motion.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Councillor Fest.
I have a question for the planner. And that is just if we moved the first recommendation that council direct staff implementation plan septic maintenance bylaw containing public engagement, then we could get going on it. As I understand it, before our term is up. I'd like to get moving on it since we seem to have interest here around this table, and I'm never keen on these things becoming a election issue, although especially when it's about ecological health and healthy waters. And it would just allow it to get started. And I'm thinking, my question for the planner is, would the implementation plan include consideration of the Grafton Lake watershed and other data as it became available? I don't know what the implementation plan would look like. What steps would be in.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any case, we would use what available data we have and we're able to find. So working with Coastal Health, we've reached out to a few essentially authorized persons under the regulation for feedback and information. But I know that the Grafton Lake Management Plan is the one thing we have underway that actually is involving testing and, you know, recommendations and all those other pieces. So if we worked on the implementation plan, you know, in May and June and came back to council in July, say, with the implementation plan, well, it probably wouldn't capture what was in the Grafton Lake Management Plan because it wouldn't have been completed yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Morris.
Well, I'm just leaning towards a modified recommendation based on was the recommendation in the report. I think it's an important issue, and if we get started on it, I'm hoping that an implementation plan is more going to cover, okay, let's educate the public that there is a problem and how they can fix it. So if we don't start with that education process, I mean, we've got the opportunity now that we've, you know, raised the issue and people are interested of starting out, you know, so I would like something more along the lines that council direct staff to prepare an implementation plan for a possible septic maintenance bylaw, which educates the public about the issue. You know, and something like that.
So smells like we're at motion time. And I've got Councillor Wake, who sort of reserved first right to move a recommendation, and then Councillor Fast, and then Councillor Morse. So, Councillor Getty.
Chop liver.
Oh, sorry. So everybody would like to make a motion, although I'll go to the Councillor Wake first.
Okay, well, based on the discussion, which I think has been very helpful, I'd like to suggest a modified version of alternative number 2. The council directs staff to prepare an implementation plan for a septic maintenance bylaw that includes consideration of the Grafton Lake Management Plan and education and engagement of the public.
Okay. Moved by Counselor Wake. Seconded by Counselor Getty. Discussion and debate of the motion. Counselor Fast.
If we're directing staff to prepare an implementation plan, it doesn't mean they have to wait all the way. So they could start with the education, right? And I'm seeing the planner, I'm turning it into a question, but the planner had already nodded his head. Is that what you take from it?
That we could start work on it in terms of the outline and the information that we currently have, but it wouldn't be finalized until after.
Right. Okay, well then I'm in support.
I might suggest one amendment then, just an adding of a report back to council on progress.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Counselor Wake.
When?
For the end of the term.
Perhaps before the break. July.
By the end of July.
End of July.
I would refer that back to the manager planning. He's got a lot of work on his plate right now.
Is the intent to report back after the Grafton Lake Management Plan is complete?
No, not
Okay.
necessarily. So the intent of this, and so let's say in report back to council on progress by July 30th or 31st, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, through the mayor, I think we focused on the environmental quality aspect of it, but there was something embedded in there that Councillor Fast referenced, which is the housing aspects of this too, and having this septic maintenance bylaw being a foundational piece to allow for more uptake of type 2 and type 3 to make those the lot requirements for development that are quite large based on that fallback to the type 1 system, allowing more flexibility for people to develop on smaller lots. So perhaps we can't comment entirely on the environmental quality aspect, but what we could do is provide information back to council on that lot development aspect and how this ties into that.
Yeah. And some of the other components too, particularly if there's a desire to develop an education plan, what could engagement look like, or what would staff like to see in terms of deploying public engagement once that watershed management plan is back, so that when that last large piece of the puzzle comes in, it's ready to move instead of we're just going to defer this whole thing until.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Does it make any sense to change the word prepared to draft? So that they can start and then.
I'll look to the planner. Is there a functional difference between the word prepare and draft? In your mind?
I'm satisfied either way.
Okay. So I'll call the question on the amendment unless there's any further discussion, that staff provide a progress report by July 31st, because I can never remember what days of the month of 30 and 31. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 And we are back on the main motion. And perhaps just for clarity, I'll have the corporate officer read back the motion as it's currently written.
The council directs staff to prepare an implementation plan for a septic maintenance bylaw that includes consideration of the Grafton Lake Management Plan and education and engagement with the public, and to report back to council on progress by July 31st, 2026.
Okay. Further discussion and debate on the main motion. Councillor Wake.
So I don't think we should overthink this too much. With the way this is written, we're not suggesting a time frame for anything other than the report back.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting ahead of ourselves on any part of it, we can move to the planner to. He's understood the discussion here, so yeah, I'm in support.
Okay. And with that, I will call the question on the main motion. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Moving on to 8.1 staff reports, we have our Q1 quarterly municipal report. I will turn it over to our CAO, Kern Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Q1 covers the period from January 1st to March 31st. Winter, usually a time dominated by, snow events and things like that. But this year we dodged a bullet on that front and not much for snow clearing. But there was a lot of exciting stuff that happened over that period. And we're just going to have each department head come up and provide a few brief words on the main highlights of the last quarter and open it up to councillors to ask any questions. So I'll start off with corporate services.
We're going to ask the questions after each presentation or all at the end?
You can ask after each.
Thank you. So for administration department, this past quarter, we were focusing on updating governance tools, investing in staff capacity, and making improvements that support council staff and the public. Much of this work happens behind the scenes, but it keeps things running smoothly. So I'll highlight just a few areas that stood out this quarter. We supported other departments in reviewing council policies and developing new internal directives. We also developed a new acceptable use of IT directive, which helps clarify expectations around IT systems use and information security. This kind of work isn't flashy, but it's critical to consistency across Bowen Island Municipality. All staff completed information and privacy training this quarter, and targeted training related to bylaw drafting and processing land title documents was also completed. We also began developing a council orientation plan, recognizing the importance of onboarding and shared understanding, particularly for future councils. We initiated the upgrade to this room's audiovisual system with a goal to improve audio quality. I hope it works. Support more effective meetings and improve accessibility for both council and the public. And we developed a new service and funding agreement with the Museum and Archives that reflects increased funding as approved by council and clear expression of heritage deliverables. Last quarter, sadly, we said farewell to long-term employee Janet Iseva upon her retirement, and we welcomed Heather Doherty to the team. And we also recognized International Women's Day. That's this lovely photo here, which gave us an opportunity to reflect on the contributions of staff across the organization and share our stories amongst several generations of women at Bowen Island Municipality. So overall, this quarter was about steady, practical process, building systems that support council's work and the organization as a whole. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councilor Morris.
Are the directives public documents? Or I'm just curious as to the acceptable use of IT directive, which is mentioned in there.
Through the chair, it is still in development. We started it last quarter, but we're that close to finishing it now. So the directives are not posted on the website, but they're available upon request.
Yeah, because I'm thinking we've all got devices and things, so.
Yeah, it will be circulated to council as well.
Thank you.
Right on. Thank you to our corporate officer, particularly for this new technology that we're enjoying today. It seems to be working very smoothly, but I've been in a couple of times this week and there was a spaghetti of cables and some frantic getting ready. So I'm really glad that it's working smoothly, and thank you to staff for putting this together.
Thank you. Next, we have our the first quarterly report from our new Director of Engineering and Public Works, Sarah Kasari.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a while I've been here. So thank you for the opportunity. Q1 2026 was a full and productive quarter for engineering and public works. I usually encourage the team members and myself to start with the planning for the year. So we, as a team, worked on our work plan for the rest of the year, and also, make sure that we have our vacations in our, calendars to make sure we do have enough kind of coverage for the rest of the year, because we are a very lean organization. We have to start planning a year in advance for all of the work, and vacation that we have. So basically, as I mentioned, we started planning. Staff completed their works plan and also and training plans for 2026. I would like to highlight a few things that I think stand out from the work that the team and myself did during the Q1. As I presented previously, Snug Cove Road and sign marking project was tendered, and the closing is this coming Friday. So hopefully we have good bids on that project. As you know, we are going to the planning, it's planned for construction after Labor Day. The second update or highlight from the report is island-wide culvert sizing, climate resilience work completed. We completed the sizing of all culverts over 400 millimeters across the island for 100-year flow condition. This is a meaningful piece for our climate resilient work. Updated cost estimates, and we put it in through our citywide asset management software. So this will position us well for future infrastructure funding. The third highlight would be the water system. We had multiple improvements across the island. On the utility side, our water operations team had a busy quarter with flushing our water mains on several, I think all the water mains flushing has been completed for the rest of the year. We repaired a significant water main leak on Emily Lane in King Edwards Bay, and also installed a new jet pump at well number 4A in Tunstall Bay. Also, the West Side Wells commissioning is complete. So this is a good news for the West Side residents. We do have highlight number 4 regarding sewer plant prep and worker safety upgrade. At the Snug Cove sewer plant, the team completed a full tear down and service of the blowers and started preparation in the tertiary room to manage dissolved oxygen level heading into the summer. This is a proactive maintenance that we are doing to help us stay ahead of the pack. Also, on the safety front, we upgraded field communication devices from SPOT to Zoleo units and formalized emergency protocols. So accountability in the field is clearly defined. So finally, citywide asset management, it is ready to roll, and I'm happy to report that our citywide maintenance management software is now fully configured. Data templates and reporting and notification and staff training all are complete across roads, parks, and utilities. So I think in a couple of weeks, we are going to have a very good news for the community that they can start reporting any and every problem for engineering department through our website. We will have some videos and trainings on our website how to report roads, utilities, parks problems across the island. We are going to continue taking calls from residents, but this is very convenient for people that they don't want to call or, it's after hours. They can report everything, and everything is going to be recorded and, be directed to the proper staffs. Yeah, so that's my overview. It was a strong quarter across both roads and utility sides of the department, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Over to you, Councilor Getty.
Okay, thank you. In the, let's see, the, facilities, it's mentioned a structural engineer has been retained for community center retaining wall. So I'm not sure what that is in addition to completion of the, I mean, it's a new facility. Is this a new aspect to this new building?
Through the chair, that's a very good question. Basically, that job by the original contractor was completed incorrectly, and there was no way for them, and there was no appetite from them to complete this job. What we try to do strategically for the team and for municipality, we are negotiating some costs and some numbers with them. So basically, we negotiated that we are going to charge them for the work, and we hired engineers directly to do this job properly. So basically, this job needs to be done, and we hired engineers, and we are right now working on shop drawings to complete the work through the summertime.
Okay, and secondly, with safety and emergency, there's some mention with respect to standard operating procedure and sorting out improving communications. But what was the follow-up following that day-long incident in Horseshoe Bay, where that terminal was shut down and all the boats were held in place, and we had what, 6, 7, 8 hours here? I think before we got any kind of a warning. So what are we doing in terms of better communication when there's an incident off the island that we're not directly involved with?
Through the chair, this is out of my my department. I think the Department of Communication, they were in charge of that communication. Regarding what we have here is for staff. We, as you know, we have a staff that they are working during the weekends, and they go in places that are not accessible. And we didn't have enough access to them. Yeah.
So it's a different department.
Yes, so the
Okay.
communication for that piece in Horseshoe Bay and
Okay.
what happened, it was
Got
not
it.
through my department.
Okay, lastly, there's mention under highlights of utilities, training, safety, and improvements that 2 training sessions at Purifics were completed. Is there any other update with respect to Purifics that?
Through
We
the
can hear
chair, I expected this question will come. Yes, I do have some more update regarding Cove Bay. What happened during the training sessions, our staff were directed to implement some recommendations from suppliers. When they came back, they procured all the required equipment, and they implemented all those recommendations from the supplier. And right now, it's been almost a week that they operated the system. The good news is that the operation is going smoothly. We haven't received the capacity that we are expecting, but the team are working, and the team is in touch with the supplier, and we will know better after a few weeks of running the system if we are going to achieve that quantity and quality at the same time. Because all along, we could achieve quality, but not the quantity. And then when we increase the quantity, the quality would come down. So we are right now working with supplier to see if we can achieve both. And it's been it's been a very collaborative few months working with the supplier.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, and thank you for
Thank
the
you.
questions. These are wonderful questions. Next, I'd like to bring up our incomparable fire chief, Aaron Hannon.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In this past quarter, it's has been heavily focused on strengthening operational readiness, expanding responder capability, and continuing to build long-term resilience within the department through training and certification development. A major focus for the quarter has been preparation towards achieving superior tanker shuttle service accreditation. Crews have been dedicating significant training time toward water shuttle operations, apparatus positioning, dump site efficiency, and sustained flow rate targets in advance of the accreditation evaluation plan for actually tomorrow evening. This is important to ensure reliable water delivery capabilities in areas without fire hydrants. We also had 5 volunteers successfully obtain their first responder medical licenses. This improves our ability to provide immediate patient care during the critical first minutes of emergency and increases the number of medically trained responders available at incidents. Additionally, 2 of our chief officers completed fire investigator and fire inspector certifications. This enhances our internal capability to conduct fire origin and cause investigations and supports fire code compliance activities without relying as heavily on external contractors. We also had 3 volunteers enroll in the exterior firefighter training program, continuing to build operational depth within the department and strengthening our defensive firefighting capabilities, water supply operations, and scene safety practices. Operationally, the department responded to 43 callouts during the quarter, while also completing a combined total of 528 training hours. Those numbers reflect the continued commitment and dedication of our volunteer members who consistently balance training, emergency response, and community service responsibilities. Overall, the quarter was very productive with a strong emphasis on training, certification advancement, and improving service delivery capacity for the community.
Thank you, Chief Hannon. Councillor Getty.
Okay, thanks. So the tanks that are shown in the picture in your report, are those semi-permanent? Like, would they be set up in Cape Roger Curtis before the worst of the summer season sort of thing?
Through the chair, these would be on the trucks at all times, so they would not be permanently deployed anywhere. They'd be deployed where needed, when needed. So they would just be taken off the truck and water would be transported to that location. And that's a big part of that training that we're currently
And then the
working on.
truck can leave and they can bring more water to fill it up again?
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
And I'm curious about this program because I'm assuming that the tanker shuttle service accreditation is why on certain evenings we've seen fire trucks going up and down the main road. And I heard a little bit about what this allows for, but if you could just, let us know what that accreditation does and sort of the benefits to the island and what it allows the department to do.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty big deal. The everyone that has insurance, that's underwritten by the fire underwriters for the fire portion of that. And they look at a lot of different factors, one of them being if you're within 300 meters of a fire hydrant. If you are, your insurance rates are based on that, and if not, it's a much lower rating. This certification will allow or should allow anybody that is not currently within 300 meters of a fire hydrant to achieve insurance rates similar to those people that are within 300 meters. So it would be a significant benefit to many people on the island.
Right. And this sort of system is available to go basically anywhere on island. That's the constant supply of water, if I understand.
That's right. Yeah. So we've calculated that there's really no homes on the island more than 3.7 kilometers, I believe, from a fire hydrant. So that's how we're conducting this test, which will be observed by the fire underwriters, and they'll then allow all homes on the island again to be looked at as if we can set up that same operation anywhere and conduct that.
That's amazing. That's great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have recreation and Jillian Drake, and sometimes seems like the department that has a lot of fun, so.
This is a very serious report today, but no, thank you, Mayor and Council. So 2026 Q1 was the first winter that BIM has spent in our new community center. So recreation continued to offer a diversity of new and established programs and opportunities to keep exploring what our community members are interested in this new facility and building our understanding of how they wish to use this. So I'll highlight a couple of items that we did, and there are more presented in the written report, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the trends that we're starting to see and the implications of some of these trends in the facility. So in the first quarter, there were 123 unique opportunities that recreation presented to the community that were sort of registrationable, that you could register for. Of these, only 9 were canceled due to low enrollment, and it resulted in just shy of 1,600 registrations. And this was for weekly facilitated programs across all age levels. This includes community presentations, such as the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival, Northern the Musician, and Laugh Out Live. It also included events such as the new event we launched this year, CD Saturday, which is a completely different type of event for recreation to do, which brought in new audience members, new community partners, and a bit of a different take on our Family Day presentations. The quarter ended with a casual one-year celebration of our first year being in this new facility. So that sort of wrapped up after the celebration of Spring Egg Hunt, and we co-partnered with Gail Lotenberg and The Hearth to present the Come Dance With Me presentation for community, which was really impactful. So 1 year in, we are starting to learn quite a lot about how the Bowen community and visitors to the island are choosing to use this new facility, and we are starting to see some trends. And as I say, these are the ones I want to talk about here. And most of it is highlighted in here. One of the really interesting things to note is the steep rise in drop-ins to programs that we're offering. So this was actually, it was a 282% increase over the previous quarter. So that isn't comparing the same period last year. It was to the previous quarter. So people are really liking this flexibility and being able to drop into programming, but it has a very significant impact on revenue certainty for our instructors, where they want to know they have a guaranteed number in order to come and teach their class. So there's program management strategies that may be revised there. The fitness center use is just booming. So that grows 44% each quarter. So January, everybody starts January really interested in being fit and healthy. So there was a slight decline from between January to March, but that was 63 members with a membership to the facility for each of the months of January and February. And that is a lot for a small facility and small, we only have one of each type of machine and, things like that. So it's quite a lot of use. And each of those members, they tend to come, I didn't run exact stats, but I guess 3 times a week, 4 times a week, a lot of our members of the facility. There's significantly more casual use of the living room space, for people use it professionally, they use it casually. People are always hanging out, kids come after school, a lot of impromptu meetings pop up there. There's very regular use of the shower facilities now. And what we're finding, one of the most exciting things, is there are large numbers of community members who are engaged for the very first time with recreation opportunities. And we're finding this through some of the specialty seniors programming, the fitness center, some of the parent and taught programming. We're getting new arrivals to Bowen Island interested in those programs because they're making those connections and social engagements. One of the quotes that we've received about the Fit Guys program was, "This is the best thing that has happened to me in 30 years." Which is a lovely thing to hear. We're also finding that Bowen-based organizations and individuals are really excited to implement their plans and their ideas in this new building. So what does that really mean on the ground, right? What it means is there's a lot more events and rentals, and a lot of this is on the weekends. So the weekend recreation staff are the go-to for that event support. And so this isn't just for the renter. This is also like if somebody's renting the facility and they suddenly have 50 to 100 people hanging out in the living room, a lot of them come with their questions. Oh, by the way, since I'm here, let me ask you this, or they have needs and we're there to serve the needs. It has to be the first function at that desk is customer service. They're often subject to the comments and moods of the renters. which are variable. But what we're also finding through that, one of the benefits of that is we're seeing that recreation doesn't need to put the same amount of work into planning those special one-off of activities because communities stepping up and doing that themselves, which is wonderful. But we're also finding that a lot of them are not equipped to do it on their own. So they're looking to rec to partner with them. And what does that look like? How do they use the facility? Can we do the registration for them? All these things. And it's good. It's just we have to be selective how we implement what we do with these, how we work with them. So the Film Society, I think, is a wonderful example of a partnership that arose because the Film Society had great ideas, wanted to present these films, a lot of it, but would not have been able to launch this program individually. So we worked together with them from start to finish in how we present each one of those bi-monthly programs that are running the films. The partnerships with community members and groups. I feel like this facility is really helping to strengthen all of those, and different people are emerging, and it's been wonderful that we're sort of in a new era of relationship with Sky, for example. Through CD Saturday, we have relationships with the Food Resilience Society and the Garden Club, and this is just a few examples. There's a lot more people just wanting to get more involved. And one of the final trend that I'm going to present and leave you with is that parking limitations are actually significantly impacting our capacity to program now, because we have to really be careful when one program is starting and when another is leaving. So participants have to be able to get out, from one program and leave time before we can schedule another one. So that is significantly impacting how much we can run through the day and how we stay aware of rental implications and other meetings. And I think that's one of our greatest challenges in this facility. Thank you. Over questions.
Thank you. Councillor Getty.
If we wanted to regularly use and advertise the use of the Bix parking lot for weekends and evenings and things like that, would we have to have some sort of an agreement with them in order to publicly?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. 100% we would. So I am preparing a report to come to the next council meeting in 2 weeks about our updated joint use agreement with the school. And that's one of their greatest concerns is overuse of the school parking lot for events here. But it is written into the joint use agreement that we have non-exclusive use of the parking lot for attendees of municipal programs outside of school hours.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Fast.
I'm just wondering if you notice, are more people, do any people walk here, cycle here? Saw somebody plugging in their electric vehicle. Do people take the bus here? Do you have any of that, even if it's anecdotal?
Through the chair, cycling, yes, and we have heard that there are sometimes that more cycling bike racks are needed, which aligns with our plan to work on building a shed out the back for bikes, a bike shed. I don't have good information about whether they bus or walk. It's hard to know, really. It's hard to know that, but I think most people tend to still prefer the flexibility and freedom of transporting themselves, I think.
Not seeing any further questions. Thank you so much.
The next department would be Parks and Environment. Is Carla online to present?
Yes, she is.
Great. Carla, if we're
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Through the chair, Environment and Parks had a really productive first quarter. I think our CEO mentioned how we didn't have a lot of snow this winter, and that really freed up our operations crew to do some trail improvement projects. Most of the photos that you see in here are of the recent builds. So we were able to build 2 sets of landscape tied stairs. One is on Ocean View Trail, the connector trail there, and then another one at White Sails Trail at Cape Roger Curtis. And they also did some really nice rock work at the base of the trail at Arbutus Point Road. where we took an old bridge out and replaced that with a culvert, which should last a lot longer and just makes a lot more sense in this location. In the office, we were busy with a lot of grant applications. So since
Frozen.
Frozen.
I believe she's in Ottawa.
Can you suggest she turn off?
Sounds like good stuff.
Giving it underwater.
Turn off your video.
Ms. Hughes, if you can hear us, you are frozen and sounding robotic.
Can she hear us?
I think we've lost the connection.
Okay. So I would suggest that we move on and we can come back to,
How do we disconnect him?
Sophie will figure it out.
yeah.
I think Carla hit on the high points here. I mean, I would only add in there there was a big well-attended workshop for optimizing and permitting costs and energy performance for the builders. That was held here at the theater, so that was a major event and a lot of uptake and interest from local building community. And then there was also the House Sound Forum attendance, and we always have some great stuff to present at the House Sound Forum. So yeah, a lot of good things there. I can, if there's any questions, I will collect them. If I can't answer them, I'll answer them later. But if I might be able to answer them here.
Not seeing any questions. I think we're okay to move on.
Taking it easy on the CEO. I like that. Okay. So with the next one, Manager of Planning and Development, who spoke earlier today, Mr. Martins.
Thank you. I'll just touch on two highlights, I guess. So one is the work of the OCP update and the OCP steering committee, and you will hear from me again later in this meeting and from members of the committee. But so that was really the dominant work of the planning department this quarter. And the other one I'll touch on is the work of the MRDT implementation program. So you received the bylaw and referred it. We've heard back from the Islands Trust and Destination BC with positive feedback on the bylaw, and we're just waiting to hear back from Metro Vancouver, and we'll be returning to council in June. Yeah, and then I'm open to any questions.
Not seeing any. Your work speaks for itself.
Yeah, and next we have bylaw services, which our CFO could speak to.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Through the Mayor, I would just like to report on some of the work undertaken by bylaw services throughout the first quarter. Bylaw services work tends to ebb and flow. Think of it with your windows closed. We get a lot fewer complaints as the season ramps up and people's windows are open and they're spending more time outside. We tend to get a lot more active calls, and bylaws a lot more active outside in the community. So through the first quarter, relatively quiet, January through March, the work of the bylaw department was really focused on policy and bylaw work. There was the council adoption of the water conservation bylaw. So this was first put through to council for consideration in spring of last year. It's taking our water conservation recommendations about restrictions for usage during drier, warmer summer months, and codifying them into a bylaw to make those recommendations become enforceable regulations. So anybody who uses water outside of those restrictions, once they're imposed, we can then begin with enforcement action to require compliance with those regulations. So as the impacts of climate change are more and more pronounced, and the the water
limitations on what we can supply through our water system. So it's really important that we have those tools at our disposal in order to enforce these restrictions. So we're happy to see that that bylaw was approved by council in March, so in the first quarter. Another piece of regulatory kind of behind the scenes work came with the housing number. We have a housing number bylaw, which requires that your housing number be visible and prominent. And that, of course, first requirement for that is so that the first responders can find you in the dark. So during the winter, members of our team are out there circulating around, making sure that that your house number is visible and we can find you if there's a call in the middle of the night. So that work goes on during the winter months. Additionally, working with partner groups about community outreach. So we renewed our service agreement with North Shore Lookout Society, which helps vulnerable underhoused people on Bowen Island. And they provide outreach services. They come over every couple of weeks to check in with people that they are aware of who are potentially underhoused, or look to see if they can offer them any additional support, access to services on the mainland. And the big news, of course, then is the work on our ferry marshalling program for 2026, which is underway. We have already hired, I believe it's 4 ferry marshals, and we're looking to add another 1 to 2 staff to our complement this year. So our staffing will be out there all weekends, at least 2, possibly 3 ferry marshalers during the weekend shifts and on the holiday Mondays as well. So look for them. We've had some very positive feedback about this program again this year, and we are really supportive and excited about the work that they're doing. We've added another component to one of the ferry marshalers this year, which he has been upgraded into a bylaw officer. So he is able to actually write tickets for infractions if they are noticed in the course of the day. If somebody is blocking or obstructing the ferry line, we can use our streets and traffic bylaw, and he can enforce the provisions of that bylaw and actually write tickets. So we were happy to make that change this year. I think that's all I have from the bylaw front, if there are any questions. Thank you.
No, not seeing any. Very thankful for the expansion of the ferry marshal program this year.
Thanks. And since I have the CFO, usually there's a finance section within these quarterly reports, but last quarter was just budget. So I think it speaks for itself. So just a lot of work on budget in finance in the last quarter. So with that, I will invite up. Do we have Kat for human resources?
We do not.
Okay, well, while we're sorting that out,
I think it's pretty straight. We can just move on to the library.
Yeah, we'll just go on to the library.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you all for hearing how the library's been doing in the first quarter. We had some great programming that happened in the beginning of the year, as well as an expansion of our library hours, just a couple of hours a week. But it's after doing a bunch of data tracking of how many people come and use the library in the later hours of the evening, it was evident that being open till 7 p.m. was a very small amount of traffic. And we decided to move those hours around and be open on Tuesday and Wednesday until 6, as well as Thursday till 6. So we've gained an hour overall, but lost an hour on Thursdays. So we were excited to provide that. And it really was partly about balancing with the ferry schedule. So realizing that if we closed at 5, people even coming on the 4, whatever the 4 ferry is, wouldn't be able to get into the library. So within the first couple of weeks, we had several people who were showing up, coming off of the 5 something or other ferry, and being able to get into the library before 6 to pick up a hold or grab something for their kids, and expressing their appreciation of that ability to get off a commuter ferry and actually still have time to get into the library. on a weekday. So that was great. We were also thinking about dangerous cargo, but luckily the dangerous cargo has been switched in hours now. But we're happy to continue on with those new hours that we have. We started the Squamish History Book Club, which is a year-long book club that is reading the book, and I'm not going to try and say it in Squamish. It's called We Come From This Land, created in 2024 by the Squamish Nation. So that book club is meeting approximately 6 times in the year to share reflections and discussion on the history of the Squamish people and how that impacts us as settlers and how we respond to that. Interest has been strong. We had 30 people registered for the first session, and we have quite a few library copies of that book that have been in circulation constantly. We are planning to build on this book club by inviting some Squamish knowledge keepers to come and do extra programming that would be available for anyone, not just book club members. And we're pleased to say that our grant application to the Community Foundation to support that extension has just been approved last week, so we're grateful to them. So we'll be bringing at least 2 other sessions in with Squamish elders or language experts or storytellers, and we're hoping to really focus at least one of those on youth and appealing to youth in that programming. Family Literacy Week was in January, and we always participate along with the Bowen Island Literacy Task Group, which is an organization made up of a number of community organizations, including the library and recreation and the Hearth and a number of others. And so that was great. We had family snacks and stories and take-home kits for people to take. The focus was on food, make mealtime family learning time. We also had, we now have a self-check machine. So those of you who use other large libraries may know about the opportunity to check out your own books. So you don't have to go up to a counter and wait for somebody to do it for you. You go to a machine and you have it happen yourself. So we've been thinking about that for quite a few years of whether or not the library should have a self-check machine. They're quite expensive. So we've sort of delayed for a while, but we had an opportunity recently with another library that was renewing their self-check machines and giving away their older models. So we asked to receive one of those, which we did. And it turned out after we received it that the manufacturer of that machine needed us to do a bunch of upgrades in order to use their machine, although we don't have a contract with them. So when we looked at needing to upgrade the machine and talked to the manufacturer said, we will upgrade it for you and it will cost you this much money. And then you have an ongoing maintenance contract with us for X amount of dollars per year so that we can continue maintaining your computer that's inside the self-check machine. Leo Peterson, our IT coordinator, said, that just seems wrong, and decided to take the machine apart and have a look and see what was inside, and discovered that there was a very basic computer inside, a very basic Windows computer running the program. And we weren't running the manufacturer's program, we're running a different program from our own system. Anyway, the long and the short is, Leo said, I can just do this. And we have nothing to lose because we didn't buy this machine. So even if the worst case happened and it didn't work, we wouldn't have lost anything. So except some of his time. So he did, he took it apart and he bought a very inexpensive $200 computer, which he installed with the new software. And it is now functioning and running without the need of the vendor's upgrade or the vendor's ongoing maintenance. And he's using a different open source software that doesn't require that maintenance from the vendor. And then the very exciting thing was he went to a conference a few weeks later of IT people from libraries talking about various things that they do and learning from each other. And he presented what he had done with this machine. And everyone at that conference at West Van Library was very excited to know that he'd actually gone around the system, so to speak, and managed to make this work. So the long and the short is we now have a self-check machine, which we are just rolling out with instructions for the public. So of course, we are always available at the desk to help people. We do not expect people to use a self-check machine. We are always wanting to be the friendly face that people can come and ask. But sometimes people would like to use something on their own, either for speed or the materials that for privacy, et cetera. So that option is there now for them and cost us next to nothing, which was great. So just a shout out to Leo, who does some amazing IT things for us in the background. For the first time, probably ever, the library was able to host some spring break programming. In the past, we've never had enough staff available to sort of add that extra level of programming, but with our current children and youth services coordinator, we were able to offer spring break programming. So Kelly provided the family cardboard drive-in movie, which welcomed 21 kids and their caregivers who built cardboard creations and enjoyed a drive-in screening of some short films from Canopy Kids. And Canopy is another streaming service that we subscribe to, and they have a whole section for just for kids that doesn't have any cost to it for our users. Anyways, they screened some short films for kids, and then Kelly Woods, our Children Youth Services Coordinator, also did some spring break STEAM Club programming, as she does on professional development days, which is also something new for the library to be able to offer those kinds of programs. So they took on an escape room theme, and you'll see some pictures in the report of the very sweet kids doing their fun stuff. As Jillian and other people have already mentioned, CD Saturday was a really great program that was led by Recreation, and the library was invited to participate, which we were very excited to do because we've had a seed library for 5 or 6 years now. So it was great for us to promote our seed library, to bring some of that material as well as some books on seed sowing and growing, et cetera. And again, Kelly and Aubin Van Berkel came up to participate in the CD Saturday. And we had a bunch of teens who also processed numerous small packages of seeds that were donated through CD Saturday. And we've now put in our seed library at the library. So that's the highlights. Anyone has any questions?
Councillor Fast.
Is that the new carpet that I see down there under those cardboard driving kits?
No, that is the carpet in the annex that has been there since 2018 or 19.
Okay.
The new carpet in the library is beautiful and came in under budget and 1 day longer than anticipated. But it looks lovely.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I just want to shout out to the Squamish History Book Club. I just discovered it about 10 days ago and signed up and got my copy of the book, and I'm working through it. And I think that it's wonderful. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for your service. I missed the going away party, but thank you, Tina.
Through the chair to Councillor Wake, thank you very much. This is probably my last presentation to council. So I offer my thanks to all of you for the amazing support that you provided to myself, through you and through all the staff, and to the library as a whole. And I'm not going to say anything further, just in case I get teary-eyed. So thank you all very much. But if you have any other questions about the Q1 report, I'm happy to answer.
I mean, I've got some other questions or other comments other than the Q1 report. So I was able to attend your event, your going away party. And just in this context here, I think it's important to recognize that 31 years of service to the community, the leadership, the stewardship, the stories that I've heard of the library are just generational. From where you started and bringing it through its current site in the annex is really incredible. And, you know, I was reflecting on it after the event and my personal experiences. You know, when I first came to Bowen, I was having a hard time, and the library was really a solace for me as I came in and found it, and, you know, found quiet spaces and books to go read in parks. And that was my first connection to the library here on Bowen. And since having my own kid that I bring down and for story time and having him check out his first book and knowing that he's going to grow up in the meeting point that you've helped build is truly inspirational. You know, it's felt like I've been here for a temporary period of time. And I look at the service you've provided and it's really a legacy to the community that I think I draw inspiration from. So on behalf of the municipality, on behalf of council, thank you so much for all of your service and your much deserved retirement. And I understand a cross-country trip is on the horizon very soon for you.
I'm very excited. Thank you very much for those kind words.
Thank you.
Okay, there is just one last part of human resources, and not that it's our last thing, because our people are our most important asset at the organization. And so there's just some highlights of the photo from the going away celebration for Janet that was referenced earlier, and then also the shout outs. And in the background, we've also been working on some important human resources related directives, like what happens if there's an unauthorized closure of municipal hall, and how do we respond to that, and how are the notifications handled? So, and then also everybody did their performance review cycle, completed that during that first quarter. So a lot of, and then human resources also had a big contribution in the International Women's Day event that was held here. So always looking for opportunities to strengthen the culture of the organization and celebrate our people, which are our most important asset. And with that, I just want to again humbly acknowledge all the work that the staff put into everything in the organization. Every quarter seems like a productive one with notable achievements, and it's just a real pleasure to work with these the fine individuals here, and it's reflected in the quarterly report how much commitment they have for the organization.
Thank you. Councillor Fast.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning them. And I just want to point out that the emergency program is in here too, with all the volunteers and the onboarding and the grants that they've been getting in order to provide emergency operating services. So that's great.
I'll move that council receives a quarterly municipal report for Q1 for information.
Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. So before our next big item, we've been going for about 2.5 hours here. Let's say we take a 5-minute recess before moving into committee of the whole, and we can get the room set up, and our folks who have been patiently waiting can do some jumping jacks to get the blood flowing again, and we'll come back at, let's say, 3:35. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. And first item of business, can I have a motion to move into committee of the whole, please? By Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. 10.1, official community plan update. Over to our manager of planning and development, Daniel Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm joined today with our two co-chairs of our OCP steering committee. So Jim Crandalls and David McCollum are here with me, and we are here to present the draft updated official community plan, the long-awaited plan. So it is here for your initial review. And I'm going to go through some of the highlights and some of the just overall structure of the OCP, and then end with talking about future public engagement. Yeah. So the draft OCP starts with an updated vision statement for Bowen Island. So the vision is to reflect community input and sets the long-term direction for the OCP. As you can see there, the vision in the official community plan is that Wailaquam Bowen Island is a caring, friendly community that lives in reciprocity with the lands and waters of Akatsum Howe Sound. We value environmental stewardship and guide development with practices that protect land, water, and biodiversity. We are a resilient community that balances the needs of both residents and visitors, honors the island's history, and celebrates a rich arts and culture sector. Then the OCP itself goes into 6 main content areas, so policies in these different 6 areas. So you'll see island-wide policies, and then environmental stewardship and resource management, housing for all, resilient and circular economy, sustainable transportation and mobility, and community vitality. And then in terms of, so the draft OCP is quite a large document if you look at it. There's a lot of policies, it's hard to distill down, and we tried to provide what are 6 key directions in this draft OCP. If somebody were to ask you, what's the key thing that this OCP does? What makes it different from the 2011? Where does it see the vision for Bowen going? And so these are 6 of those key directions that we identified. So the first is embedding reconciliation as a core principle. So you'll see that from the direction from council for our guiding framework for UNDRIP. But you see it come up multiple times, and it's based on that direction, and then our feedback we've gotten from Squamish Nation. So committing to ongoing collaboration with the Squamish Nation and Indigenous governing bodies. Next, you'll see it introduces new and updated development permit areas to better protect the island. So these include wildfire hazard DPA, a water conservation DPA, and an updated environmentally sensitive area DPA. And it supports a broader mix of housing types. So it sees this broader mix happening in existing neighborhoods. And this is partly to align with our Bowen's housing needs report that outlines housing needs on Bowen for the next 20 years. But in tandem with that, it's trying to ensure new development reflects Bowen Island's environmental capacity and risk constraints. So lots of consideration there about what is carrying capacity on different sites. It focuses new growth in areas with existing services and infrastructures and limits development in new areas. And then finally, it embraces a nature needs half approach where increased development is coupled with protection of 50% of the property and strengthens consideration of biodiversity. I know I have a couple slides. I won't go into details here, but one of the things we looked at is coming from the What We Heard report that we presented to council last summer, and trying to show the linkages between what we heard and then what comes in the draft. So the first one I mentioned already, we heard very strongly nature conservation and protection of ecosystem and green space was one of the top priorities. So you see in the draft that nature needs half philosophy, strengthened ecological protection, biodiversity considerations. And the next one, just to pull another one out, we specifically asked a question for people about, do you support policies supporting green development, including tree preservation and stormwater solutions? And so in the draft is a call for a tree and forest retention bylaw. And so that's coming directly from the What We Heard report. We have another slide. So transportation mobility were major themes. We heard lots from people about expanding multi-use pathways, improve safety for walking, cycling, rolling. And so what you see in the draft are sustainable transportation options, including supporting the Cross Island multi-use path and safer shoulders and bike routes. Yeah, and then I'll just move on to the land use designations. So this is the map that shows where on the island or which designation applies to your property on the island or different properties on Bowen. And so 4 key things, takeaways from this map. So one is you'll see an overall consolidation of land use designations. So trying to reduce the number of designations to make it more legible, make it easier to navigate. So for example, the various parks designations are consolidated into a single parks and recreation designation. You'll see conservation areas extend into the ocean. So previously they pretty much ended at the natural boundary, and we just saw the ocean as a single designation. So here, where conservation areas extend to the natural boundary, we are extending them out over to the end of the municipal boundary. When you go into the land use designations themselves, you'll see support for infill development in this neighborhood residential designation. So that's areas of existing sort of neighborhood level development, like in Deep Bay or Blue Water or Eagle Cliff. So supporting that infill development and contemplates rezonings for townhouses and pocket neighborhoods. And then finally, in tandem with that, it sees lower development potential in undeveloped areas. So theme from the committee was that areas that have not seen subdivisions, have not seen road development, have not seen clearing associated with that development, that we should be lowering the potential for subdivisions and developments in those sites. Development permit areas, so I mentioned these before, but so one of the things it does is bring an updated environmentally sensitive area DPA. So a map that's highlighting where sensitive areas are on Bowen, including a sub area for Cape Roger Curtis, because we heard fairly strongly people concerned about the unique ecosystem of Cape Roger Curtis. And then in the draft as well are 2 proposed new development permit areas that would cover all of Bowen Island. So one for wildfire hazard and one for water conservation. And then I should say for all 3 of these, they essentially designate the development permit area, and then what they highlight is that specific guidelines would be developed in the land use bylaw similar to our other development permits. So those would be future projects for council to initiate. So with all of that, we are looking to launch phase 2 engagement at the end of May or May 22nd. So we see engagement taking a number of routes. So we see online survey like last time, we see pop-up events, so see us around town at events and at public places. We see outreach to interest holders. So we did that last time. And again, we'll reach out to our list of interest holders, both on Bowen and then provincial agencies and other interest holders for comment on the draft. And we see holding, in June, we see holding an open house and workshop here at the community center, where people who want to spend more dedicated time to delve into the policies in more detail can do that. And then we've had engagement with First Nations groups ongoing throughout this. So there's 10 First Nations groups who are identified as were within their area of interest. So we've reached out to all of them and continue. Okay, that is the end of what I have to present. And now I'm open for any questions that council has.
Okay. Thank you. And I will look to council for questions. Councillor Fast, followed by Councillor Getty.
I'm just impressed. I was interested because I was on the previous OCP update, and I'm seeing things reinforced. I'm seeing progress, I guess, and some innovation in terms of taking the conservation areas into the sea. I think that's, those kinds of things I think are really good. I didn't have specific detailed questions because I was able to find them all in the draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Getty.
Kudos to all of the hard work that the committee's done. And I think that you've pulled everything together very nicely in this report. It looks good, and it, I mean, I've got my blue pencil out and I've got all sorts of piddly little things, but there's a whole lot to think about. And I appreciate the way that it's set up, and that I think that we're going to have some good discussions, and that it's amazing that you can actually get that size of a committee to get together and write a report, and I guess with the consultants as well, and all of the different threads that came together to pull this off. So I think that we've been very, very well served, and I think this is going to be an excellent discussion that we'll have in the community. So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Other comments? Councillor Wake.
Thank you. Just want to echo Councillor Getty's comments. It's a lot, and which means it's a lot for you guys. But I think it's come out pretty well. The emphasis on, we've got to be very careful about protection, about capacity, about aquifers. All that message comes through loud and clear. And it'll be interesting to see how we can turn that into actual informing of council on various development decisions. But one thing I saw which really encouraged me was we'll need tools like the partnership with the Conservancy and the diversity plan, so that we can actually get granular and get good information on an individual property. And so, well done, thank you.
What a document. And just my first appreciation to the amount of effort that is taken. I know that there's been a large number of meetings and a lot of wordsmithing and a lot of figuring out what goes in here. And it's very, very appreciated. I'm curious, just on a high, I've got some specific questions, but just on a high level, as the committee brings this to council and it's about to go out into the community, are there pieces that the committee is still wrestling with, or you folks are still wrestling with, or things that you'd like to see, or any outstanding issues in the OCP, or is this like, it's good to go?
We live in a community that loves to provide feedback, so we would be crazy to say it's ready to go.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to the engagement through the summer, and would hope that members of council would really try to drive people to that, and help us to identify potential engagement opportunities that we haven't thought of yet.
Right.
If I can add to that, I think one of the things that when we set out with this work and you gave us a task to do that, one of the things that I think we realized was rather optimistic was to have a much more concise document, and something that would be, we definitely want to make it, the previous version is, or the current version, I should say, is rather cumbersome. And I know that it can be very difficult for both staff and council to sort of see and get through everything to really give you guidance. And so one of the lenses that I would hope that you specifically would take as you're hearing from your constituents and you're starting to look at that document, will this document give you the kind of guidance that you will need to frame the kind of decisions that council will need to make over the next number of years? And no doubt it is a draft, and there's some things that we will have missed, or I'm sure it'll be pointed out saying, you have some contradictory policies in here. And so we do need to find that out. There was no way a committee of our size could sort of get it to a level without knowing that there's going to be some things that need to be discussed and reviewed. And so we're really hoping that we'll hear that feedback from everyone as we head into this consultation.
Right. Great. I've just got a couple other points here. I think the engagement is going to be very, very important, and this is something less to our committee co-chairs and more to staff. Is that online survey is great, pop-up events are great, workshop sessions great, like everything here is great, but there's a real focus, I think, from our communications team to get the word out in publishing it in the undercurrent. I think we should use some online ads. I think we should consider a mailer out to everyone on the island, so that there will always be people at the end of the day that said, you did not engage with me. But I think we need to do our very best now that there's a draft document in front of us to get that into the hands of folks, so that it turns into a living conversation throughout that month of May and June. So that at least they've seen it, and at least there's some buzz that's being generated around it is going to be so important. The other comment I have just, and this might be a structural piece, and I've, the first read through of the document is still relatively new to me. And it's something I'm giving some thought to. I think, Mr. Crandall's in your comment of making this the most use, is, maybe there's a committee comment on this, or maybe it's just a structural piece, is that there's policies in here that are very directive, and some of them that are quite advisory. That and those will use the language of like encourage or may consider supporting versus the language of shall or will or this is what this thing means, full stop, no variation. And I think it's totally acceptable to have both of those in there because we want some flexibility as we go and implement this in the land use bylaw and development permit areas. But just whether there's like an organizational piece in there to keep the directive pieces like this is what has to happen, and then from there this is what has to be considered when you're looking at a development or something like that. That would be the only feedback that I have now in terms of the structural piece, but I'll certainly be participating in the open house and workshop as this sort of settles through me. And the only other part that stood out to me, and this has been a thorn in my side, is around temporary use permits. I think there's maybe a more refined discussion that has to happen on that, and that might not necessarily be the committee's role. There might need to be some council direction on there, but it feels like they've given us some problems over the years, and we may want to consider a more prescriptive approach on those as this moves into the next OCP policy. So thank you so much for the work, and it's certainly our job, and I'll take up the call to get people out to these events, but I think there's some municipal backing from our communications department that can really help push this out as well. And Councillor Fast.
I'm hoping you can remind me how this is aligning with the trust policy statement, which is currently in the draft and it won't be even completed this term. Now we've learned.
Yeah, so through the chair, we had initially worked at making it compliant with the draft updated. And then as we learned from the Islands Trust that it will not be like that their project will not complete and that we would likely be coming in advance. It's that this OCP needs to be compliant with the current Islands Trust policy. So we have ensured, like with every version of our draft as we iterate, to make sure we're hitting all of the directive policies in the current Islands Trust policy statement. But we have not done the same like every policy of the draft.
That's great, because it was the ministry who actually told the Islands Trust that they weren't going to have time to look at it before, so it's that's fabulous that you're looking at it in terms of the current.
Councillor Morse.
I just wanted to, as the council liaison on the committee has worked really hard, and congratulate all the members for contributing. And it is actually smaller in page numbers than the current OCP. And if we get rid of some of these blank white pages and don't fill them up with pictures, then we'll be even smaller.
We used a smaller font.
Yeah.
Oh, I was bigger font, I was like.
Other questions, comments from council, from the committee chairs? Again, I mean, what a monumental piece of work to get to this stage. Councillor Getty?
I guess, what's the process contemplated in terms of, I guess it's the open house and workshop sessions that I'm primarily interested in terms of taking it apart section by section and getting into some depth around that and bringing in the interest holders and, whether or not there's specific interests that are covered or things that they think are left out or, basic conundrums that I think might still exist. I mean, I can send you all of my editing, but that's not content. And I think that some of these other questions in terms of, you know, how do we actually balance the capacity issues with the infill ideas and all of that kind of discussion.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at doing with even just our boards and survey is trying to ask people specifically some of that balancing question. There's one thing to ask people, you know, do you like this and do you like this? And people say, yes, I like this, and yes, I like this. But trying to give some sense of like, okay, if you had to pick between the two, where would you, or would you go in the middle, or would you go, you know, and trying to, through the engagement, have people do some of that balancing. And then in terms of the workshop, yes, I think looking at, you know, some sort of like the World Cafe thing where it's like, come to this table and we'll talk about the housing stuff. We'll talk about the resilient circular economy piece or whatever it may be to delve into the policy. So, we actually, our next steering committee meeting is on the 14th when we're going to look at the engagement in more detail. But I think you'd see a similar in that we'll close the engagement process and then we'll do, you know, an overarching report that again looks at, okay, what did we hear in this period? And then from there probably comes, you know, where do we see amendments? And it'd be, you'll get a big table that says like, these are all the things that we're changing because we're this, we're changing this, we're changing.
That's helpful. We also had a meeting this morning of the one of the Islands Trust groups, and the chair has glanced through this as much as she could over the weekend, and she's quite impressed with it too. She's looking forward to the process.
Councilor Wake.
I'm not sure exactly what the process is here in terms of what this means for the land use bylaw. Will this inform applications to amend the land use bylaw, or will this actually precipitate some changes?
I think through the chair, it does both. So, I mean, it's a document to guide council, but so if this OCP, you know, this draft is adopted or a version like it is adopted, then anybody who's applying to, you know, to rezone their property, well, we would be applying to this OCP to say, how are we considering these applications? So that's one piece. And then the second piece is in the draft as currently written right now. It has a number of things where it says council should consider amendments to the land use bylaw or consider amendments to do certain things. And that essentially becomes, you know, when this is adopted, that becomes in part council's like strategic plan to say, okay, in 2027, we can see the OCP calls for 10 things to happen, 10 changes to land use bylaw. We think 3 of them should be the top priority, directing staff to make those amendments. So it does, it's both.
Mm-hmm. And I understand, if I understand correctly, that was a challenge from, or some unfinished work in the last OCP was that there was a number of pieces in there, including development permit areas that didn't get harmonized with the land use bylaw. So as this gets approved, I would love to bundle that with the motion that actually gets work started on the underlying legislative framework of how to do that. Yep. Councilor Morris.
I have one more question, which I raised it, I think, a meeting 2 ago. We need to get the word rural in here in a couple of places, because we keep trying to convince the province and the feds that we're a rural community. But if we don't have it in our vision statement and in our guiding principles or something, then I think they could call us on it and say, well, you're not calling yourself rural, so why should we recognize you? So I forgot about that the last meeting.
Councilor Fast, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure, thank you. I was just looking here, search for the word rural, and it's in there a bunch of times, not just in the names of, you know, rural residential and that kind of thing, but the municipality remains committed to balancing housing needs with the rural character of the island. Those kinds of things are good to read in there. I haven't looked at it in big detail, but I haven't found anything that is jumping out at me as being a problem either. One thing with the previous OCP, we tried to put a lot of the action items into that last chapter, section 11, I think it was kind of a big to-do list, and that wasn't effective. So I wasn't looking at it necessarily here because it didn't work. So this is great. Thank you.
Okay. And just the last question to our co-chairs before we wrap up. feels as if council got to drop an elephant into your laps and told you to eat it in a way that you likely didn't know how big the task was going to be from the start. And now that we're at this stage and we're connecting again between committee and council as the engagement unfolds and as these next couple of months unfold, I'm curious if there's any or like what kind of support would you like from council, or do you folks need from us, or ways that we can assist you as we start to come back and converge on getting this thing into its final form and approved and over the finish line?
Coming, sir.
Please.
I think one thing that I think would be helpful for the committee is, and this would be in your own review of this, is sort of going back to what I said earlier, was, are there things in here that you're finding problematic and that you would like us to, or clarify, or things like that? Because it will be the folks around this table who ultimately has to, approve the bylaw to adopt the plan. And if there's something that we are way out to lunch on, it would be good to hear it now as opposed to when it goes to reading. And as well, is it achieving the kind of things that you set out at the forefront when you established the terms of reference for the committee? So I think that would be a good thing to know. I know we're going to hear a lot of things from folks in the community, as we should, and some of those will be conflicting. And so knowing if there's things as we get to a final draft that we can get behind as a committee, the more that can come out will be helpful. So just to recap on that, I think it's just to have your own individual look on that and look through it, and if you're going to be attending any of these sessions, to sort of listen to what things you might want to give us further guidance on. I don't know if that means at a council meeting or even just individually, just so that we can hear back from the decision makers.
I think it might be both, like formally and informally. And I'll certainly take that to heart. As well as, the process is interesting because we turned it over into the hands of community as well. So I'm like, as I really start to get to the intent behind the policies and how they sort of all fit together, I'm really looking at it as like this was community generated without a lot of council help to see what lights up there. So yeah, interested in that.
If I may, I think it'll be really vital for this group and this group to be aligned as we go into those engagement sessions, so that it's effective. And so I guess my ask is that those of you who are less familiar with the document really dig into it to make sure you can support it, so that if areas in which you can, then we'll hear about that hopefully before we're standing out there, either with you or without you talking to them.
Okay.
So showstoppers really are what we're after, what I'm thinking.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll look for a motion to pull us back into the regular meeting, that we go back into a regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor?
All right.
Carries unanimously.
So do we need a motion now to receive?
Yeah, I think so. Do we need a motion to receive all of that? No?
No?
Hold on.
Committee, the whole, is it? Discussion.
Okay, so moving us through quick on new business updates on Metro Vancouver business. There was only a regional parks meeting held, I believe, last week that I attended. The main point of business there was to hear from the Kanaka Educational and Environmental Partnership Society, as well as renewing, or a recommendation to renew a contribution agreement to the Kanaka Creek Bell Irving Hatchery. Interesting stuff. If folks want to read up on that, the agenda is linked. And then there was a TransLink Mayor's Council meeting, which had some transportation trends updates. We are on the fringes of the region. And then lots of discussion going on now at that body in terms of the federal pre-budget submission. And also continuing to press the federal government on their permanent transit fund and increasing funds to public transit in the region. And over to our municipal trustees.
Okay, I'll start. Do you want to?
No.
Okay. I had a Trust Programs Committee meeting on May the 7th, so last Thursday. And just a few bits of news. We passed a motion to Trust Council that they accept a draft new trust policy statement amendment policy. So the point of this is that in each term, Trust Council will look at the trust policy statement and choose some topics that they want to amend that term to get around the problem of having a 25-year-old document that has never been substantially reviewed, because all these other things come up and then it's too late in the term kind of thing. So that is going to Trust Council in June, I think. I was happy we received a briefing about Crown land agreements, which are also really old and outdated. And so this might be an opportunity to update them between the province and the Islands Trust staff, and Bowen staff, I believe, have been involved as well. So these are kind of like a protocol agreement or an agreement to at least let each other know when there's something happening, and that each other's interests are taken into account. And then some other little things. And then May 13th, this Thursday, is the big online committee of the whole about where the trust policy statement is now. It'll probably be something quite similar to this, except it'll last all day. And yeah, and I'll just, the agenda's online. Anybody can have a look, or you can watch it. And over to Trustee Getty, who I think is also been part of some of the meetings I was in and some of the meetings I wasn't.
So the May 13th open house or committee of the whole is extensive report from the staff in terms of the thousands of replies that they had to the draft policy statement. So we're going to be getting summaries of that and trying to see whether or not there's patterns and what the problems are. So that's going to be interesting. So what I've been involved in, the governance committee had a meeting on April the 29th, and we went through a bunch of sort of smaller housekeeping kinds of things, recommending changes to committee structure and agreeing to an annual report statement and accepting a report from the ombudsperson. They've updated their open meeting report, and it's 60 pages, but it's helpful, and it might be something that we considered this morning in terms of onboarding for new trustees, but it's lengthy and it's wordy and it's part of the information dump that people get at the beginning. So we're going to work on some sort of a summary and highlights of how people can read that. So that might be helpful. We have we got some legal advice with respect to one question that was coming up, and that is going to be I think updated at the next Trust Council meeting. And we went through a very long list in detail of all of the powers that have been delegated to the executive committee, so that we had a much clearer idea of all the work that's involved with that group, and whether or not all of those should stay delegated or come back to Trust Council or some of the standing committees. So that's an ongoing discussion. Our next meeting is July the 15th. And that's after the next Trust Council meeting, which is June 16 to 18. And we had changed that to from an in-person meeting. The next two full Trust Council meetings are going to be Zoom. And that's saving $80,000 in the budget. So yeah, we'll see how it goes with the 26 trustees plus all the staff in a Zoom meeting. So back to the days of the pandemic and see how it, but it was considered to be a major budget saving, so we're doing it.
Thank you. Questions or comments for our municipal trustees? Not seeing any, we will move on to question periods. So question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask follow-up questions relating to an item discussed at the meeting. I'll look to our gallery and online if there's questions here.
No questions online.
Not seeing any, and I will look for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned.